This course is divided into 5 sections. Each section has the same layout. First, you'll listen to an English conversation. Second, you'll complete a comprehension activity. Third is vocabulary lessons and activities. Next, grammar lessons and activities. And finally, you'll complete a writing activity. Let's talk about that English conversation you'll listen to first. To practice your listening and comprehension, you're going to listen to a conversation that I have with my husband, Tyler. I provide a conversation transcript for you. What I want you to do is to listen to the conversation without the conversation transcript first. Then listen to the conversation again with the transcript. In the transcript, you'll notice that I've underlined and bolded important vocabulary that we will review later. You will also notice grammar concepts highlighted in red that we will review later. After listening to the conversation at least twice, you'll complete a comprehension activity to test how well you understood the conversation. Feel free to use the conversation transcript or go back to the video to help you if you need it. After the comprehension activity, we'll move on to vocabulary. I'll review important vocabulary and phrases from the conversation and talk about their definitions. Then, you'll complete a fill-in-the-blank activity using these words and phrases. Next, we'll review grammar concepts. After the grammar lessons, you'll complete a grammar activity based on the information you've learned. And finally, you'll have a writing activity to complete. You'll be asked specific questions about your thoughts and opinions regarding the topic of conversation. Each activity you complete has an answer key providing the correct answers. Compare your answers to the correct answers to see if you got them right. Make sure to answer each question in each activity, even if you're unsure. A guessed answer is better than no answer at all. The only activities that do not have an answer key are the writing activities, because answers will vary. You can use the forum to interact with me and other students if you would like to discuss your writing activity answers. If you have a friend you can practice English with, talk to them about your writing activity answers to practice your speaking. If you come across information you already know in any section, feel free to skip it and move on. However, I suggest reviewing the concepts anyway, as a review of information is always beneficial and can aid in further understanding. Hi everyone, I'm here with my husband Tyler, and in today's lesson we're going to be talking about restaurant culture. We're going to be talking about how restaurant culture in the United States differs from restaurant culture in other countries. The first thing I want to talk about is tipping or gratuity at restaurants and how much you're supposed to give a server at the end of your meal.
What's expected, right?
Yeah, what's expected here compared to what's expected elsewhere. When Tyler and I traveled, we've traveled to several different countries, the tipping was a little different.
Very different.
So let's talk about some of the ways it was different to us.
Well, some places didn't even expect a tip for certain services like drinks.
That's right. So if we were just grabbing a beer at a pub in the United States, it's expected to give around...
It's like $1 a drink.
$1 a drink is usually the rule. When we went to other places and would order a beverage, we always felt a little guilty about not leaving anything because that just felt weird to us.
Also, the money was different because coins have a larger value in most places compared to the United States.
Yeah.
So we're like, take the coin.
When it came to food, that was also different. What's the rule here for leaving a tip?
Generally, it's 20% is a solid tip.
A solid tip. I would say anywhere from 15 to 25% would be normal. So 15% for okay service, 20 for solid service, and then 25 for really good service.
And it could depend on how nice the restaurant is. So if you're going to just a bar food place, then the food quality isn't that high, so you're not necessarily going to give a great tip, or that's the place you tip the most because you like that kind of place. So it really varies.
Yeah, it depends on the person and the place and the food, but to be safe, I would say 20% always. But it does depend. You and I, we're pretty patient. If we don't get our food right away, we're still going to tip 20%. But some people, if there's one mistake, they'll say, I'm leaving 15% or 10%.
And I think it could have to do with what jobs you've had in the past. So I've been a barista before, so I know that's not always the most fun job.
Yeah, and I've been a hostess before, and I know how stressful it can be if the kitchen messes up your food, but then you get blamed and you don't get the tip. But in Europe, when we went, we asked a waitress because we had no idea, and she said around 10%, but they don't expect anything, so it's always something extra. It literally is a tip.
But the reason for that is because they are paid a wage that is...
A living wage.
Yeah. In the United States, what waitresses and waiters are paid is not something you can live off of, just the wages. You have to depend on those tips.
Right here, I think the wage is $3 an hour, and then anything you get.
Is it 3?
Yeah, for a waitress. Yeah, so their survival depends on those tips. And then in other countries, they're getting paid a living wage, so the tip truly is extra.
So I think the thinking behind that is to incentivize the waitresses and waiters to provide good service.
Good service. Yeah,
if they want a good tip.
That is another thing.
But then it's not fair when they don't get a good tip and they have good service. So it's kind of a weird system.
Yeah, I think that's another thing we found. Although it's good that they're getting paid a living wage, we also found the service wasn't as great in Europe as it is here, because people are really trying hard to earn that tip. So they'll be overly nice and attentive. But then in Europe, it was like they didn't really care that much. They're still getting paid.
And maybe that's also a cultural thing, because we are expecting to be waited on immediately, within a couple minutes of sitting down. That would be a long time. Normally, when you sit down at a restaurant here, you are greeted by a waiter or waitress within a minute.
Or even less than a minute.
or in 10 seconds. But in Europe, where we went, it was maybe 10, 15 minutes would go by.
Yeah, it was a way slower pace than what we're used to. And I think there it's expected that you sit down, you enjoy your meal, you're there for a long time, you're not in a rush, so the service is slower. But here in our culture, everything moves really fast and everybody's really busy. So we're expected to get instant service. We're not expected to have to call the waiter over to ask us for the bill.
If you motion to a waiter, that's rude.
But when we went to Europe, it was expected and we felt so rude. But otherwise, we ended up waiting.
Especially because we didn't speak the language. So it was also
a language barrier.
Sort of embarrassing, I guess, because we would say, we wanted to leave like 30 minutes ago, but we don't know how to get out of here.
Yeah, so we ended up staying at restaurants for way longer than we wanted to. I'll ask you about this. What did you think? Here, I think it's very standard to ask for a to-go box if you don't finish your food, because you don't want to waste food. The portions here are large in the United States. It seems like they purposefully give you too much food. I never finish it. I always ask for a takeout, to-go, doggy bag.
Takeaway, as they say in London.
Yeah, here it's to-go. A to-go bag. But in Paris, we ate at a restaurant and we were given a big portion of food, or maybe we just ordered too much. But do you remember when we asked for a to-go bag?
Felt like I had insulted his mother. That's it was something that is, and it comes back, I think, maybe to the type of restaurant. It was sort of an upscale restaurant, but I think it could have indicated that we didn't like the food.
Which was just so different from here, because here if you ask for a to-go box, they're happy to give you one and understand that.
Yeah, I couldn't eat all that either.
Yeah. On a personal level, how much would you say we go out to eat?
I would say 2 to 3 times per week on average. Sometimes less, sometimes more.
It's easier because we don't have kids. I feel like if you have a big family, it would be harder to go out to eat. But since it's just you and me, we go out to eat more. How many times a week do you think the average family goes out to eat?
Once?
Yeah, I would say once a week would be normal. Now I have some facts for us to read and reflect on. Are you ready?
Okay.
The first fact is that Americans consume 31% more packaged food than fresh food.
Ew.
Is that surprising?
No. I think it testifies to the fast-paced culture we live in.
Right.
Grab something real quick and get on your way.
The next one is at least 1 in 4 Americans eat fast food every day.
That's bad.
That's really bad.
So what are some fast food? McDonald's, Arby's,
Wendy's,
Dairy Queen, Burger King.
Taco Bell. This one kind of goes with the others, but 20% of all American meals are eaten in the car. Aren't these fascinating? When traveling, eating in the car is okay, but that's a lot of people eating in their cars.
Well, that's the drive-through people. People who order the food in the McDonald's drive-through and then just eat it in the car and go wherever it is they're going.
Looking at all of this restaurant culture and all of these facts that we've been presented, what would you say this says about American culture?
For better or for worse, it moves fast.
I also think it reveals how busy our lives are with work and kids and family. And maybe we need to spend more time focusing on what's important.
One of my favorite quotes is, "Busy is a choice."
Now let's practice what you've learned. First, let's test your comprehension and see how well you understood the conversation Tyler and I had. I'm going to read some statements. What you need to do is write down if these statements are true or false. If you think the statement is false, please correct it and make it true. Here's an example for you. Tipping $5 per drink is normal in bars and restaurants in the United States. The answer to this is false. Since it is false, I need to correct it to make it true. I would write something like, tipping $1 per drink is normal in bars and restaurants in the United States. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper or device, so you can check your answers later. Use the conversation transcript and pause the video if you need to. Number 1. Most waiters and waitresses in the United States depend on tips for survival. Number 2. A 5% tip is the average tip given to waiters in the United States. Number 3. It is considered rude to ask for a to-go bag in restaurants in the United States. Number 4. On average, Bethany and Tyler eat out 4 to 5 times a week. Number 5. 1 in 4 Americans eat fast food every day. First, let's talk about some important vocabulary and phrases that you heard in our conversation about restaurant culture. The first phrase I want to talk about is mess up. If someone messes up, this means that he or she made a mistake or did something wrong. For example, don't mess up or we'll get in trouble with the boss. Or, she scored a goal because I messed up the play. Let's see how we used it in our conversation. And I've been a hostess before and I know how stressful it can be if the kitchen messes up your food, but then you get blamed and you don't get the tip. So there I was talking about when I used to be a waitress and a hostess at a restaurant. And sometimes the kitchen would mess up or the chefs would make a mistake with the food. The second phrase I want to talk about is living wage. A living wage is an income that allows a worker to meet his or her basic needs. Let's see how we use the phrase living wage in our conversation.
But the reason for that is because they are paid a wage that is...
A living wage.
Yeah. In the United States, what waitresses and waiters are paid is not something you can live off of, just the wages. You have to depend on those tips.
So here we were talking about how in Europe, most waiters and waitresses get paid a living wage. They get paid a wage that allows them to meet their basic needs and buy things such as food, clothing, and shelter. Let's see how we would use living wage in a sentence. The living wage in the United States is about $15 an hour. Or, the teacher was barely making a living wage. The next word is incentivize. To incentivize someone means to give him or her motivation to do something. For example, say a boss or employer wants to incentivize his employees. He might give them a raise or a bonus. Let's see how we would use the word incentivize in a sentence. To incentivize customers to buy the ice cream, the company provided coupons on its website. Now let's see how we used it in our conversation.
So I think the thinking behind that is to incentivize the waitresses and waiters to provide good service.
Good service. Yeah,
if they want a good tip.
In our conversation, we discussed that maybe one of the reasons that waiters and waitresses in the United States don't get paid a living wage is to incentivize or to motivate them to work harder to make more tips. The next word is attentive. If someone is attentive, this means that they're paying really close attention to something. Let's see how we used it in our conversation. Because people are really trying hard to earn that tip, so they'll be overly nice and attentive. So what I was saying was that because waiters and waitresses are working so hard to earn a tip, sometimes they can be extra attentive, or in other words, they'll pay really close attention to you. They'll make sure your water is refilled, they'll make sure your food gets out quickly, and they'll do anything they can to make sure you have a good experience. Let's see how we would use attentive in another sentence. As a loyal husband, Tyler is very attentive to my needs. Next, we have the phrase to be in a rush. If someone is in a rush, this means that they are in a hurry or they are needing to move quickly. Let's see how we would use it in a sentence. I'm always in a rush in the morning. I can never seem to wake up early enough. Now let's see how we used it in our conversation. And I think there it's expected that you sit down, you enjoy your meal, you're there for a long time, you're not in a rush, so the service is slower. Here I was talking about how in Europe, restaurants didn't want you to feel like you were in a rush while eating there. They took their time to take your order, and they took their time to bring it. Now let's practice using the vocabulary we talked about earlier. I'm going to read a sentence. There's a word missing in the sentence. Write the correct missing word using the vocabulary words from earlier. To record your answers, use the worksheets, a piece of paper, or a device. Feel free to use the vocabulary list provided for you. And of course, pause the video if you need to. Using vocabulary words numbers 1 through 5, use the correct word or phrase to fill in the blank. Number 1. The mother had to be extremely when watching her baby because he had just learned to walk. Number 2. To him to clean his room, she promised him ice cream afterwards. Number 3. If you, the paperwork, the boss will get mad at us. Number 4. There was no need. They had plenty of time before the party started. Number 5. How's anybody supposed to make with a salary of $3 an hour? Next, we have the phrase end up. If you end up in a place, it's likely because something happened that put you there. For example, maybe I ended up in Virginia because I missed the exit on the highway. Let's see how we would use it in a sentence. Don't break the law, or you might end up in jail. You can also end up doing something because of something else that led to it. For example, I ended up taking a nap today because I didn't get much sleep last night. Let's see how we used it in our conversation.
If you motion to a waiter, that's rude.
But when we went to Europe, it was expected and we felt so rude, but otherwise we ended up waiting. So here I said that if we didn't ask for the bill, we ended up waiting a really long time at the restaurant. So in order to not end up at the restaurant longer than we wanted to, we had to learn to ask for the bill. The next phrase is language barrier. A language barrier is a difficulty in communication between two or more people who speak different languages. For example, when I went to Costa Rica, I stayed with host parents who only spoke Spanish, and at the time I only spoke English. So there was a major language barrier between us when they would ask me a question and I didn't know how to respond. Let's see how we used it in our conversation.
Especially because we didn't speak the language, so it was also
A language barrier.
Sort of embarrassing, I guess.
In my conversation with Tyler, we talked about how part of the reason we didn't know the cultural norms in restaurants there is because there was a language barrier. We didn't speak the language, so we couldn't even ask when we were confused about something. In a sentence, we might say, the language barrier made it hard for us to communicate. Or, due to the language barrier, he misunderstood and thought she said something impolite. Next, we have the word to-go box. Some people call it a to-go bag or a to-go container. And some people call it a doggy bag. A to-go box is a container given at a restaurant to take home any leftover food that you didn't finish. Asking for a to-go box in a restaurant in the United States is very common. Let's see how we would use it in a sentence. The next time the waiter comes over, I need to ask for a to-go box. Let's see how we used it in our conversation. I'll ask you about this. What did you think? Here, I think it's very standard to ask for a to-go box if you don't finish your food because you don't want to waste food. We were talking about how in the United States, it's very common to ask for a to-go box. But at this particular restaurant in Paris, it didn't seem appropriate. We felt embarrassed because something that felt so normal to us didn't seem normal there. The next word is upscale. If something is upscale, it's luxurious or costly. It's fancy. If you go out to eat at an upscale restaurant, you may want to dress a little bit nicer than if you were eating at a burger joint. If you shop at an upscale boutique, you'll probably find that the items on sale are more expensive than items at a regular store. Let's see how we would use it in a sentence. They live in an upscale neighborhood in a house that I would never be able to afford. Let's see how we used it in our conversation.
It was something that is, and it comes back, I think, maybe to the type of restaurant. It was sort of an upscale restaurant.
So here we were thinking that maybe the restaurant that we ate at was an upscale restaurant, and that's the reason why they seemed offended when we asked for a to-go box. Next on our list is indicate. To indicate means to show or signal. For example, his actions indicate that he's not interested in the job, or his actions are showing that he's not interested in the job. She shook her head to indicate her disapproval. Or in other words, she shook her head to show or convey her disapproval. Let's see how we used it in our conversation.
But I think it could have indicated that we didn't like the food.
So here we were talking about how asking for a to-go box may have indicated or shown the workers that we didn't like the food, which of course wasn't true. We loved the food. We were just too. Now let's practice using the vocabulary we talked about earlier. I'm going to read a sentence. There's a word missing in the sentence. Write the correct missing word using the vocabulary words from earlier. To record your answers, use the worksheets, a piece of paper, or a device. Feel free to use the vocabulary list provided for you. And of course, pause the video if you need to. Using the vocabulary words, numbers 6 through 10, use the correct word or phrase to fill in the blank. Number 6. She could tell the boutique was because they only carried premium brands of clothing. Number 7. If we keep going this fast, we're going to in a ditch. Number 8. To her disgust, she spit onto the ground. Number 9. I was trying to understand what he was saying, but but there was too much of a. Number 10. The waiter looked insulted when the man asked for his food. Next, we have the phrase on a personal level. When someone says on a personal level, they are talking about someone's personal life. In our conversation, I was talking about restaurant culture when I said, on a personal level, how much would you say we go out to eat? So I wanted to ask a more personal question. Let's look at another sentence. I love work, but on a personal level, I'm feeling a little stressed. Now let's look at the word ew. 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 Ew.
Ew.
There are many different ways to say the word ew, but all show or indicate disgust. For example, ew, look at that bug. Do you like him? Ew. The word ew, as you may be able to tell already, is an informal word and wouldn't be used in formal situations or conversations. Let's see how Tyler used it in our conversation. The first fact is that Americans consume 31% more packaged food than fresh food.
Ew.
So here, all Tyler had to do was to say one word, ew, to show his disgust over the fact that I had presented him with. Next, we have testify. To testify is similar to indicate in that it shows something, but often it provides proof or evidence of something. For example, the data testifies that the program is successful. Let's see how Tyler used it.
I think it testifies to the fast-paced culture we live in.
Right.
Grab something real quick and get on your way.
So Tyler was saying that all of the processed foods that Americans eat testifies or proves that we live in a very fast-paced society. Which leads to our next phrase, fast-paced. It means what it sounds like, a pace that is fast, but not in the literal sense. So we're not talking about someone who is running at a fast pace. We're talking about things that move quickly. For example, I love a fast-paced novel that keeps me interested the entire time I'm reading it. Last but not least, we have the word drive-through. You may see it spelled like drive-through, which is an informal spelling. A drive-through allows customers to order and receive their food while staying in their car. Many, in fact, most fast food restaurants have drive-thrus. In a sentence, we might say, they were running late, so they stopped at a drive-thru to order lunch. In our conversation, Tyler talks about the drive-thru people.
That's the drive-thru people. People who order the food in the McDonald's drive-thru and then just eat it in the car and go wherever it is they're going.
He was saying that a lot of Americans eat in the car, and those Americans are probably stopping at the drive-thru restaurants to do so. Now let's practice using the vocabulary we talked about earlier. I'm going to read a sentence. There's a word missing in the sentence. Write the correct missing word using the vocabulary words from earlier. To record your answers, use the worksheets, a piece of paper, or a device. Feel free to use the vocabulary list provided for you. And of course, pause the video if you need to. Using the vocabulary words numbers 11 through 15, use the correct word or phrase to fill in the blank. Number 11. This soup is disgusting. Number 12. I'm hungry and we don't have much time, so let's stop at a. Number 13. I can to the employee's work ethic and good character. Number 14. She had to wear fur in her fashion industry job, but she despised wearing it. Number 15. Our society is so that people hardly stop to talk to each other anymore. For today's grammar lesson, we're going to be talking about informal contractions. Throughout our conversation, you'll notice that we contract words, or smush them together to make them easier to say. Americans can be lazy, and we can also be lazy with the way we speak. When we're talking informally, like with friends, sometimes we don't pronounce words exactly the way they're supposed to be pronounced. Because my husband and I know each other very well, we were speaking casually or informally with each other. We were using words that we probably wouldn't use in formal conversations, such as interviews. While you may not hear these words in formal situations or see them in formal writing, you will hear them all the time in casual conversations with friends. They're important to know and to recognize when talking with native English speakers, and if you want to sound like a native English speaker yourself. Today, we are going to focus on 3 informal contractions in particular: wanna, kinda, and gonna. Tyler and I used these informal contractions during our conversation about restaurant culture. We're going to talk about each one, and then you will complete an activity to practice using them. After you complete the lessons and exercises that follow, try listening for these words or using them yourself the next time you're around a native English speaker. The first word I want to talk about is wanna. Wanna is a casual or shortened way to say want to or want a. You'll hear this all the time in informal conversations. Remember, wanna has 2 meanings: want to, or it can also mean want a. Let's look at the first version, want to. I want to go shopping turns into I want to go shopping. We want to eat out tonight turns into we want to eat out tonight. You want to go to the concert turns into you want to go to the concert. They want to have breakfast for dinner turns into they want to have breakfast for dinner. Now let's look at changing want a to wanna. I want a kitchen with white cabinets turns into I want a kitchen with white cabinets. They want a new car turns into they want a new car. We want a fireplace in the basement turns into we want a fireplace in the basement. You can change want to wanna. However, you cannot change wants to wanna. For example, she wants to talk to you cannot be changed to she wanna talk to you. That is incorrect. You can't turn she wants a pizza into she want a pizza. That doesn't work and is incorrect. Remember, the word wanna can either mean want to or want a. I'm going to read some sentences with the word wanna. What I want you to do is to change the word wanna into either want to or want a. Write your answers on the worksheets, on a piece of paper, or on a device. Feel free to pause the video if you need more time. Number 1, they want to come over for dinner at 6 o'clock. Number 2, I want a pony for Christmas. Number 3, we want to go to Hawaii for our vacation this year. Number 4, does she want to play or not? Number 5, you want a big TV for your living room. Kinda is a lazy, shortened way to say kind of. Kinda wouldn't be used in formal situations like an interview, and wouldn't be used in formal writing. But with friends, you'll hear the word kinda a lot. Let's look at some examples. I'm kind of hungry, which means I'm somewhat hungry, would change into I'm kinda hungry. She looks kind of sick, would turn into she looks kinda sick. It tastes kind of like ice cream, would turn into it tastes kinda like ice cream. Earlier, we talked about how the word kinda is a shortened and informal way to say kind of. I'm going to read a paragraph with missing words. Fill in the blank with the correct word using the word bank to help you. Write your answers on the worksheets, a piece of paper, or a device. Please pause the video if needed. The shortened and casual way to say kind of is the word kinda is and should only be used in casual conversations with friends or family. You would never use this word in a situation like an interview or school essay. The next word I want to talk about is gonna. Gonna is a shortened way of saying going to. If you have definite future plans, or you're talking about something you're going to do in the future, use gonna. Let's look at some examples. I'm going to run 3 miles today would turn into I'm gonna run 3 miles today. She's going to win would turn into she's gonna win. We're going to drive there would turn into we're gonna drive there. 2 things to keep in mind about the word gonna. You cannot use gonna when talking about a place. For example, I'm going to the store cannot be changed to I'm gonna the store. That doesn't make sense. You can only use it when you're talking about future actions, when you're talking about something you're going to do later. You cannot use it for a place. Earlier, we talked about how the word gonna means going to when you're talking about future plans. I'm going to read 4 sentences that have the word gonna in them. One of them uses gonna incorrectly. Which one is it? Write down your answer and explain why it's incorrect. You can write your answer on the worksheets, on a piece of paper, or a device. Write in English as much as you can. A. They are going to cook breakfast for us. B. We are going to play our music as loud as we want. C. I'm gonna the pool to swim. D. She's going to pick them up from school today. Now let's practice your writing. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to write your answers in English. Be as detailed as you can, writing at least a few sentences, or more if you want to. For this part, you're definitely going to have to pause the video to give yourself enough time to record your answers. You may use the conversation transcript and any other resource to help you write your responses. If possible, talk about these questions with a friend in English. Because answers will vary, there is no answer key to this section. Number 1. What is eating out at a restaurant like where you live? Do waiters expect a tip? If so, how much? Number 2. What might be considered rude behavior where you live when eating out at a restaurant? Number 3. How often do you go out to eat? When you do go out, where do you like to go and why? Number 4. What do you think about American restaurant culture? Did anything surprise or alarm you? How does it differ from other places you've been? Hi everyone, I'm here with my husband Tyler, and in today's lesson we're going to be talking about wedding traditions in the United States. So the first thing I want to talk about is the average time it takes for a couple to become engaged in the United States. What do you think the average dating time before you ask someone to marry them is, Tyler?
It was higher than it took me to get engaged to her.
Yeah, that's
I think it's 3 years.
I would say most people wait about 3 years. But nowadays, some people wait 5 to 7 years before they get married. Now let's talk about our story. Tyler surprised me and asked me to marry him only 6 months after we had been dating.
There's a movie called When Harry Met Sally, and there's a quote that says, it's something along the lines of, if you know what you want in the rest of your life, then you want the rest of your life to start as soon as possible.
And we've been together 7 years?
Yes, married for 5-ish, and together longer.
And that's another thing, is how long the engagement period is in the United States. I would say average, it's around a year. And since we got engaged so fast, we waited a year and a half? No. Oh, we just waited a year.
She doesn't even remember because it was so fast.
Oh,
it was a whirlwind.
It happened very fast. But wouldn't you say an engagement lasts around a year here?
Yeah, I would say a majority of people are a year.
How did you propose to me?
I hung a bunch of notes from string and I hung them from the ceiling. So Bethany had to follow a path of notes. sweet nothings, if you will. Things that I liked about her, and it led her through her apartment up the steps where little old me was waiting. So if you're looking to propose to your girl or guy, that's a pretty good strategy right there.
It was very sweet. Another tradition in the United States, especially in the South, in the southern region, is the man is supposed to ask the woman's father for permission.
For her hand in marriage.
I would say this one, maybe.
Oh, whoops. The wedding ring hand. It's an older tradition.
Right, but I would say in the South where I grew up, it is more common here. Definitely.
It's a sign of respect.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but it definitely doesn't happen all the time everywhere. So did you ask my father?
I asked her dad when I was pulling over to the auto parts store to get windshield wipers. I just decided, hey, I'm going to call Mr. Lanier. Hey, can I marry your daughter? Yes? All right, sweet.
Was it that easy?
That's how I like to remember.
Next, I want to talk about bridesmaids and groomsmen. In the United States, it's common for the bride to have a few friends by her side, and it's common for the groom to have a few guy friends by his side. And I think the average number of bridesmaids and groomsmen varies. Mm-hmm. Some people don't have any, some people have a lot. How many did we have?
7 each?
I think about 7 each. And it used to be that you had to have the same number on each side, but now I think it's less strict and people kind of just do whatever they want.
You can always do whatever you want. It's really about the family and, again, the tradition, because some things are expected from elders on what's supposed to happen.
That's true. What are the duties of the bridesmaids and the groomsmen? I'll go through the bridesmaids first. So you have a maid of honor, and she is the closest bridesmaid, I guess you would say, to you, and she's responsible for planning all the parties, and she's responsible for helping you all day on the wedding day.
And she's usually a relative, like a sister or a best friend.
She's there with you for every step, like getting the dress, planning the wedding, and then the rest of the bridesmaids kind of just are supposed to show up to the events. What about the groomsmen?
Groomsmen don't really have any responsibilities.
They're more relaxed about it.
Guys don't really do much before a wedding. We just hang around and wait.
Did your groomsmen have any responsibilities ever?
No. It's just supposed to be a relaxing environment that they're supposed to create for you.
Bachelor and bachelorette parties have evolved over the years. Tradition has it that you're supposed to have 2 separate parties, the groom with all of his groomsmen, the bride with all of her bridesmaids. They say it's the last night you're single.
But you're not really single.
But you're not really single. You've been with this person for maybe 5 to 7 years.
Right.
But I guess it's true. You're not married. So it's your last night of not being married. So you're just supposed to have fun with your friends.
Right.
In other countries, do you know if they have bachelor and bachelorette parties?
I don't know, but do we want to talk about how they're celebrated here in 2018?
Okay.
There are these, at least with women, I see them all wearing the same thing, usually black. All the bridesmaids are wearing black outfits of some sort, and then the bride-to-be has a white outfit maybe, or a sash, or even a tiara or some sort of costume. And you can always spot a bachelorette party because it's this big group of girls and they're all hooting and hollering.
Yeah, that's true. Do guys dress up at a bachelor party?
No.
I don't think so.
No. Did you have girls dress up the same at yours?
Yes, except I wore black too. So
maybe
we
you
all
had
wore
a
black.
special. Did you have anything special?
I had a pink sash. Let's move on and talk about the traditions on the actual wedding day. I know for the bride, you're supposed to have something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. So you're supposed to wear all these things. You're supposed to have something on you that's old, new, borrowed, and blue. And I didn't do that. That's tradition, and I just totally didn't do any of that.
That's way older tradition, though.
No, but a lot of girls do it. Any traditions for the guys?
I can't think of one.
Me neither. It seems like the wedding is mostly about the bride.
Yeah.
There are a lot of traditions, however, at the ceremony and the reception afterwards. So at the ceremony, it is tradition for the father to walk the daughter down the aisle. There's a ring bearer, which is usually a little boy or little boys who carry the ring. Flower girl or girls who throw petals on the ground for the bride to walk over. Exchanging of vows, which are sometimes written by the bride and groom themselves, or at other times written by
the officiant. You're offered different ways you can confess your love for one another or pronounce your love for one another.
Then there is the exchanging of the rings. In the United States, we exchange rings and they're put on the third finger on the left hand. And what about the reception?
The reception, there are a couple traditions I can think of. The announcement of the bride and groom for the first time, Mr. and Mrs. Larson. And then the bride and groom has their first dance and everybody watches. And then there is a father-daughter dance and a mother-son dance. And then everybody dances.
Then there is the cutting of the cake. So one of the main traditions is the bride and groom hold hands basically over the knife.
Yeah.
Like this.
If there's a cake right here.
You go like this and you cut the cake and then you feed the cake to each other. Some people like to get a little crazy with it and stuff the cake in the other person's face or on their nose. And we hadn't talked about what we were going to do, if we were just going to nicely feed each other or get messy and fun with it.
Something that brides do typically is get a lot of makeup professionally put on their face.
So I was very dressed up. I had spent a lot of time and money that day getting prepared. And I guess we hadn't learned that marriage is communication yet because I hadn't communicated to Tyler all of these things. So he wasn't thinking about any of that when he stuffed the piece of cake all over my face.
In my family, all I had ever seen in weddings was stuffing the cake in the face. So that's what I thought was supposed to happen.
He was only doing what he thought he was supposed to do.
Yeah, and I was actually really looking forward to that, like all day.
That was our first fight on our wedding day, but I got over it and we had a fun time. So the dress rehearsal happens the day before, and the groom's parents are supposed to pay for the dress rehearsal dinner, and the bride's parents are supposed to pay for the wedding day. Which I think, out of all of the traditions, this one's the most followed, but it's also the most outdated to me. It's like, why should the bride's parents have to pay for everything?
I don't know who set these traditions.
But people follow this one especially, all the time. Now that people are waiting to get married until they're older, sometimes now the bride and the groom actually pay for the wedding.
And the dress rehearsal is a very simple walkthrough of the wedding and then followed by dinner and sometimes a party, sometimes not. And that's usually the last time that the groom and bride to be see each other. The next day is not allowed to see them until they find each other at the altar.
Now I want to present some facts about weddings and marriages in the United States. Are you ready? According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the median age of men who get married is 29, and the median age for women is 27. I think it has to do with money. A lot of people want to save up their income to be able to pay for the wedding themselves and to have enough money to raise a family if they want to raise a family. And when you're young, you're still going through college and finding a job and all of that, and that's very stressful in itself. So waiting kind of makes sense. According to a Pew Research survey, 15% of American adults have used an online dating service or app to find someone to date.
I think that back when we were dating, the only thing available were websites, and that was typically for older generations. And now
the younger generations are using apps like Tinder and Bumble to meet up with people. We never use those apps, but a lot of my young single friends use them. The next fact is that in the United States, it is not a law that the women have to take the man's last name, but 70% of women still take the last name of their husband.
Mm-hmm. Which is an arduous process.
Now I know a lot of women who get married aren't, because we're in the age of feminism, I guess, and they're thinking, hey, why do I have to do all this work?
Or even a different extreme, the man changes his last name to a hyphenated last name, so they include both last names.
Mm-hmm. And in the South, what you do is you definitely take the man's last name and then you get rid of your middle name and exchange it for your maiden name.
Which is what you did.
Which is what I did. Okay, Tyler, how much do you think the average wedding costs in America?
It's hard to say. I want to say I could be way off. 5,000? Wait, let me change it.
Okay, let me put it into perspective.
10,000.
Okay, our wedding, we did limited everything, and our wedding was about 11,000.
Okay. Whoops.
So guess again.
15,000.
This shocked me too. The average cost of an American wedding is around $30,000 to $35,000.
Our wedding was nice. We had a very nice wedding.
Mm-hmm.
That is too much money.
That's a lot of money.
That is stupid.
Mm-hmm.
I remember what it is though.
What?
When you want to spend the rest of your life with someone, you want...
Before we move on to vocabulary and grammar, let's test your comprehension. How well did you understand the conversation that Tyler and I had about weddings in the United States? I'm going to read some statements. Decide whether they are true or false. If the statement is false, change the statement to make it true. Here's an example for you. It is considered rude in the South for men to ask the woman's father for her hand in marriage. The answer to this would be false. Since it is false, I need to change it to make it true. I would write, it is a common tradition in the South for men to ask the woman's father for permission to marry her. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper, or a device, so you can check your answers later. Use the conversation transcript and/or pause the video if you need to. Number 1. Tyler and Bethany dated a year before Tyler proposed. Number 2. It is common to see bridesmaids wearing similar outfits at bachelorette parties. Number 3. Wedding vows are always written by the bride and groom. Number 4. The median age of men who get married in the United States is 29. Number 5. It is law for the woman to take the last name of her husband. Now let's review some important vocabulary that you heard in our conversation. I'm going to go over the definition of each word and some examples, and then you'll practice the vocabulary by completing a fill-in-the-blank exercise. The first word is engaged. Engaged can mean busy, occupied, involved in, interested in, or it can also mean a formal agreement between a couple to get married. Obviously, Tyler and I were using the last definition of this word in our conversation, since our conversation was about weddings. We were using it to describe a couple who had formally agreed to get married in the future. You may hear it in other ways, such as the students were engaged in the teacher's lesson, which means the students were involved in or paying attention to the teacher's lesson. But as I said, in our conversation, we were using it to talk about people who are planning to get married. Let's look at some more examples of using the word engaged when talking about people getting married. How long have they been engaged? They got engaged last year. Is it normal to be engaged for 3 years? The second word is nowadays. Nowadays means currently or in the present time. Often this word is used to compare the distant past to the present. Non-native speakers often use this word incorrectly. For example, you might hear a non-native speaker say, "I used to live in Canada, but nowadays I live in the United States." While people will understand what you mean, it's not the correct way to use that word. You want to use this word when talking about the very distant past to the present. For example, I remember having to take pictures with a camera, but nowadays we can just use our cell phones. So usually when you're using this word, you're comparing the old way of doing something to the way it's done now. Non-native speakers often use this in the wrong context, or they overuse this word when they really mean to use the word now or recently. So before you use it, ask yourself, are you comparing something in the very distant past to the present? If you are, then that's an appropriate time to use the word nowadays. The next word is whirlwind. Whirlwind means air that moves quickly and rapidly. This is the literal meaning, but most people use this word figuratively. They use this to describe exciting or busy events going on in their lives, or to describe something that's happening quickly or rapidly. You'll often hear the word of after the word whirlwind. For example, she felt a whirlwind of emotions after he proposed. Her son had a whirlwind of activities to attend after school. Next is the phrase sweet nothings. Sweet nothings is a phrase that describes romantic and loving words exchanged between a couple. Often you'll hear the phrase sweet nothings along with the word whisper. For example, he whispered sweet nothings to me while we danced. You will hear this word when the topic of conversation is about love or romance, or in this case, about weddings and marriages. Let's see how Tyler used the phrase sweet nothings in our conversation. How did you propose to me?
I hung a bunch of notes from string and I hung them from the ceiling. So Bethany had to follow a path of notes. Sweet nothings, if you will.
Normally, people talk about whispering sweet nothings to each other, but in this case, Tyler was talking about the sweet nothings that he wrote down. The next phrase is hang around. Hang around is very similar to the phrase hang out, if you've heard that one before. Hang around means to wait in a place for a while or to waste time. Hang around and hang out are pretty interchangeable. However, if you're waiting in a place for a long time or wasting time in a specific area, then use hang around. For example, I'll hang around downtown until you get here. There is nothing to do except hang around and wait. If you're talking about passing time with friends, then use hang out. For example, I'm hanging out with Sarah tomorrow. Couldn't change to I'm hanging around Sarah tomorrow. Let's practice the first 5 vocabulary words we've gone over: engaged, nowadays, whirlwind, sweet nothings, and hang around. Then we'll move on to words 6 through 10. I'm going to read 5 sentences. Each sentence has a missing word. Fill in the blank with the correct word using the 5 vocabulary words we have reviewed. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper, or a device so you can check your answers later. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Number 1. They weren't hungry, but they decided to the kitchen while his mother got ready. Number 2. She whispered into her lover's ear. Number 3. Payphones used to be extremely useful, but they aren't needed. Number 4. They've been so long that we're starting to wonder if there will ever be a wedding. Number 5. Moving, starting my new job, and getting married has been a... Let's review the next 5 words on your vocabulary list. Vocabulary words numbers 6 through 10. After we review the definition of each word and go through some examples, you'll complete another fill-in-the-blank activity with these words. The 6th word on our list is sash. A sash is a long strip of cloth worn across the body. In our conversation, we talked about how brides and bridesmaids sometimes wear a sash when they go out to their bachelorette parties. In the past, you might see sashes worn by military members or aristocrats. Nowadays, they are common at beauty pageants, graduation ceremonies, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, birthday parties, and of course, bachelorette parties too. Let's look at an example of how we would use sash in a sentence. Even though she said she didn't want one, her best friend bought her a sash to wear at her birthday party. The words Graduate 2018 were printed on the black and white sash he wore to graduation. The next word is hooting.
And you can always spot a bachelorette party because it's this big group of girls and they're all hooting and hollering.
Many times, native English speakers will drop the G sound in words ending in ing. This is to make the word easier to say. Most of the time, people do this unconsciously. However, I know Tyler, and he was just being silly. He didn't do this unconsciously. He actually did it purposefully to make it sound like he had a southern accent. However you use it, whether it's formally hooting or informally hootin', hooting means to shriek, cry, or shout. It's also the word used to describe the sound an owl makes. Let's look at some examples using the word hooting. She listened to the hooting owl from below. The girls at the bachelorette party started hooting when they entered the bar. While usually the word hoot means to shriek, cry, or shout, there's also a couple of slang phrases that native English speakers use with the word hoot. One of them is to be a hoot. If someone's a hoot, this means that they are amusing, funny, or entertaining. For example, Tyler jumped on the couch and started dancing. He's a hoot. Another slang phrase that uses the word hoot is to not give a hoot. This means that you don't have interest in something or you don't care at all about something. For example, she said she doesn't like you. I don't give a hoot. The next word is rehearsal. A rehearsal is the act of practicing for some event. For example, Broadway performers will often have multiple rehearsals before they perform in front of a live audience. In the United States, people will have a wedding rehearsal the day or the night before the actual wedding. This gives everyone a chance to go over their roles. The bride will practice walking down the aisle with her father. The officiant will go over the schedule so that everything is ready to happen the next day. Also in the United States, there is a rehearsal dinner, which is simply the dinner that happens after the rehearsal. In a sentence, we might say, the rehearsal went so badly that the actors were afraid opening night might be a failure. The next word is outdated. Outdated simply means out of date or no longer current. It's something that is old-fashioned. Something that is outdated may still exist, but it's not really used by many people anymore. For example, dial-up internet is outdated, payphones are outdated, and VCRs are outdated. Let's look at a sentence. The computer's operating system was so outdated that the computer barely functioned. The last word on our list is arduous. Arduous means difficult to accomplish. In our conversation, Tyler talked about how changing your last name can be an arduous process. In order to change my last name to Tyler's last name, I had to fill out a lot of paperwork and change my name on all of my identification cards, such as my driver's license and my passport. If something's arduous, it's really difficult to accomplish. In a sentence, we might say, the arduous and intense workout session lasted 2 hours. Let's practice the last 5 vocabulary words we've gone over. Sash, hooting, rehearsal, outdated, and arduous. I'm going to read 5 sentences. Each sentence contains a missing word. Fill in the blank with the correct word using vocabulary words numbers 6 through 10. Write your answers on the worksheets provided. a piece of paper, or a device? Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Number 6. The teenagers were with laughter in the back seat of the car. Number 7. The article said the hike was easy, but it turned out to be a journey up the mountain. Number 8. For her 21st birthday, she wore a pink sparkly at her party. Number 9. He thought the ideas his grandpa suggested were thoughtful, but... Number 10. Not only did the parents attend their son's concert, but they also went to the night before. For our first grammar lesson in this section, we're going to be talking about homophones. Homophones are words that sound the same, but are actually spelled differently and have different meanings. For example, the word bear and bear are homophones because they both sound the same, but they are spelled differently and they mean two completely different things. The word bear means to have no clothing or cover, while the word bear is an animal. I'm going to go over 4 homophones that Tyler and I used in our conversation about weddings. These words sound the same, but have different spellings and different meanings. The first homophones I want to go over are the words there, and there. I've seen native English speakers as well as non-native English speakers use these words incorrectly. The word there refers to a place. For example, we went there for lunch yesterday. You will also see it at the beginning of sentences before the word is or are. For example, there is traffic every day in this area. If you need a little trick to help you remember that there refers to a place, look at the word there. In this word, you'll find the word here, which also refers to a place. Next is the word there. This time, there is a contraction. The apostrophe tells you that this word is actually combining 2 words. They are. So for example, you could say, they're not together anymore. They are not together anymore. If you're not sure whether to use this word there in a sentence, replace it with the words they are and see if it still makes sense. For example, they're staring at us. They are staring at us. So in that case, the sentence makes sense, so you would know you need to use the word there. The word there is a possessive word, like the word his, her, your, or my. For example, their car is parked in the driveway. Or people need to take responsibility for their actions. If you need a trick to remember that there is talking about possession, look at the word heir, which is inside there. Heir refers to a person who is legally entitled to property. So you can think heir, talking about property, there also is talking about property. The other homophones I want to talk about are alter and alter. Tyler used the word alter in our conversation about weddings. The word alter is a noun. The altar Tyler was talking about was the structure at the end of the passageway where the bride, groom, and officiant stand. Altars are often the center of worship at a religious place such as a church. People may take communion at an altar or pray at an altar. For example, the pastor walked to the altar to give his sermon. So the word altar has a homophone, alter. The word alter is a verb. It means to change or to modify. It is often used to talk about changing text, clothing, or buildings. For example, we need to alter the script to make it shorter. Or, his suit needs to be altered before the wedding. The next homophones I want to talk about are I'll, and I'll. I'll is a contraction and it combines the words I will. For example, I'll go to the grocery store tomorrow. We use the word I'll in our conversation about weddings. An aisle is a passageway between rows. The bride, usually with her father, will walk down the aisle towards the altar at a wedding. Theaters, churches, airplanes, trains, and grocery stores all have aisles. For example, I like aisle seats on planes because I like to stand up and stretch my legs occasionally. Next is the word aisle. Many non-native and native English speakers confuse aisle and aisle because their spellings are so similar. However, they mean completely different things. Aisle refers to a landmass, such as a small island. For example, the airplane crashed on a deserted aisle. The last homophones I want to talk to you about are your and your. Many people confuse these two words and they're easy to mix up, especially when you're writing. Your is a contraction and it means you are. For example, you're going to be late. On the other hand, the word your is possessive. For example, your hair is long and beautiful. Or, I'll take your jacket and hang it up for you. A trick to see if you've used the right your is to replace your with the words you are. If it makes sense, then you know you need to use your. If it doesn't, then you need to use your. For example, if your child turns 5 in October, he can participate in the soccer program. If you are a child does not make sense, so this would be incorrect. I would need. Now let's practice using the homophones we learned earlier. I'm going to read a sentence. There is a word missing in the sentence. Fill in the blank with the correct word. You have choices given to you at the end of the sentence to pick from. For example, if going to the party, then I'm not going. Choose from there, or there. The answer is there. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper, or a device so you can check your answers later. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Number 1. Coming over for dinner at 7 o'clock. Number 2. House has 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. Number 3. I put the packages over for you. Number 4. On the Mexican holiday, Day of the Dead, many people create an for a loved one who has passed away. Number 5. Should we keep the dress the way it is, or should we it? Number 6. When I'm rich, I'm going to buy my own private. Number 7. She asked the worker which she could find the shampoo and soap. Number 8. Do it if you won't. Number 9. I love that. Silly, and don't take yourself too seriously. Number 10. Don't lose sunglasses again. In today's grammar lesson, we're going to be talking about the verb get. The verb get has dozens of meanings in the English language. Today I want to review 6 meanings of the verb get. In our conversation, Tyler and I used it when talking about getting married. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the median age of men who get married is 29. So the word get can mean become, obtain, receive, go, arrive, or buy. There are so many ways you can use the word get, and you will hear it regularly. Let's go over these 6 different meanings. If you're using get with an object, it's usually going to mean obtain, receive, or buy. For example, I got my bachelor's degree at the University of North Carolina. I'm going to get detention because I was late for class. I'm getting a new computer. If you're using get followed by a place, it's going to mean arrive or go. For example, did she get to California safely? Get away from me. I got home at 7 o'clock. If an adjective follows get, then it means to become. For example, the tea is getting cold. It's going to get dark earlier at night now. She's getting married in October. The next time you're talking to a native English speaker, listen for the word get. How is it used? Was it any of the meanings that we went over today? Or did it mean something else? What other verb could you swap it out for? Now let's complete a practice activity with the verb get. I'm going to read a sentence with the word get in it. Choose the best meaning for the word based on how it's used in the sentence. Choose from the words we reviewed earlier: obtain, receive, buy, arrive, go, or become. For example, if the sentence read, I got my master's degree in May, the answer would be obtain, because in this particular sentence, get means obtain. Write your answers on a piece of paper or a device. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Number 1, she didn't get home until midnight last night. Number 2, he shouldn't get so upset when something doesn't go his way. Number 3, they finally got the new car they wanted. Number 4, he got the letter in the mail last week. Number 5, we are going to get permission from the teacher. Number 6, get over there right now. Now let's practice your writing. I'm going to read some questions. After each question, pause the video and write your answers in English, being as detailed as you can. Write a full paragraph or more if you can. You may use the conversation transcript and any other resource to help you write your responses. If possible, find a friend to talk about these questions with to practice speaking English. Write your answers on the worksheets provided or a piece of paper. Because answers will vary, there is no answer key to this section. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Number 1, in your opinion, how long is an appropriate time to date before getting engaged? How long should an engagement last? Why? Number 2, think about a wedding you have attended. Whose wedding was it? When was it? What traditions were upheld at this particular wedding? If you've never attended a wedding, what traditions would you expect to see? Number 3, what do you think about American weddings? Have you been to any? Did any fact or custom surprise or interest you? Hi everyone, I'm here with my husband Tyler, and in today's lesson, we're going to be talking about etiquette in the United States and how we interact with each other in different scenarios and different situations. You'd be surprised how in everyday occurrences we don't realize how cultural they are. For example, greetings. Say I was introducing you to a friend that you've never met. What might you do? Would you hug? Would you give a handshake?
No, you wouldn't hug. You would handshake.
That's true. So I would say the normal thing to do when meeting a stranger in the United States is to give that person a handshake.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So we had 2 friends from England who we saw, and I went in to give them a handshake or a hug because we kind of know them. And instead, they went for a kiss on my cheek. I was kind of taken aback, and then I thought it was over, and then they went in for another kiss on the other cheek. I thought, how funny is that? Something that's so natural for us normally in another country is completely different than how we do it. Have you had any experiences with somebody from a different country greeting you in a different way?
I think it's more of a girl thing. Like girls get the kisses on the cheeks in European culture. I think men are handshake or hug.
Yeah. I feel like in other cultures, though, they're more hands-on. Is that the right thing to say?
They're more physical with their greetings.
Yeah, in the United States, I feel like we like our space.
Some.
Some. But as a whole, I feel like our culture values personal space. And in other cultures, they talk really close to each other and they hug a lot, even strangers. They kiss each other on the cheek. So I feel like that's very different than how we do it here.
Which we talked about in the restaurant lesson, which is the intimacy between friends is a lot more obvious.
Okay, now let's talk about punctuality and how Americans deal with being on time. So say someone invites you to dinner at 7 o'clock. What time do you show up?
Right at 7 or a little after.
What about a party? Like a birthday party is at 7. What time do you show up?
7:30.
What about a doctor's appointment?
15 to 20 minutes before.
That's normal for us to show up early to some events and late to some events, but in other places it's completely different. I had some Spanish friends tell me that even at appointments, it's okay to show up late and that they're not so strict about time. Maybe birthday parties are the only times where it's okay, it's socially acceptable to be late.
Fashionably late. I think anything that you pay for or involves money, you are generally early for. So doctor's appointments, dentist appointments, anything you're paying for or being paid for, you should be early. One of my favorite sayings is, early is on time and on time is late. That's what I've always lived by.
Why do you think Americans are so strict when it comes to being on time to places?
It just goes back to the eating culture. We are on the go always and can't spare any time.
Right. I feel like we think our time is very valuable.
We think that.
Yeah, exactly. We have very important things to do, apparently, and so we don't want to waste even a few minutes of our time. Now let's talk about some things that you would consider rude to bring up during a conversation, or even acts that would be considered rude that may not be considered rude in other countries. One thing I think that could be considered rude is asking someone their age.
Oh, yeah.
It depends on who you're talking to, but if you're talking to a person who's older than you and you ask them how old they are, sometimes they can be offended by that. I'm not really sure why. Why do you think that's the case?
I would say it's more women that are offended by that than men.
Maybe.
Because they want to think they're younger than they are.
What's another thing that might be considered rude to bring up during conversation?
Maybe asking how much money somebody makes.
Yeah, money is a very touchy subject with, I would say, most people. Most people do not want to tell their income.
It depends on age, I think, also.
Really?
Younger people, I think, are more willing to discuss money because they're newer to making it. Whereas somebody who's been working in a career for a while, it's not necessarily something that they feel like they should tell people about.
One action that I think is considered rude in the United States is cutting in line. Talking about all of our cultural habits, Americans like to be on time, they like to do things quickly, and they like rules. So if you're waiting in line to buy something, and if someone cuts, it's a huge deal.
It could be overlooked if somebody's not in a rush and is a non-confrontational person, maybe they'll let it slide. But is line cutting not frowned upon in places other than the U.S.?
I remember a student that I taught who was new to the United States, and we went to lunch in the cafeteria, and he grabbed what he wanted and passed everybody and just walked out. And he didn't realize the procedure of waiting in the line behind everyone because he had gotten his food faster than the people in front of him, so he was ready to go. But he didn't realize he had to stand and wait. Another story is I was recently in the airport, and it seemed like everyone was late for their flight, so people were kind of panicking. And this lady in front of me, she asked to cut to get ahead, and this man behind her freaked out and got really upset and said, "We're all waiting too. You can't just pass everybody." And she said, "My flight's going to leave in 20 minutes. And it was this big ordeal. And that just reminded me, again, the importance of not cutting in line.
If you're going to cut somebody in line, make sure you're bigger than them.
Another subject you shouldn't bring up in conversation is politics. What do you think?
Avoid at all costs.
That's another big one. Politics aren't even just politics. There's so many underlying issues. It really comes down to what your morals are. And so if your morals differ with someone's and you're talking about that, things can get really heated.
Especially in our current state of affairs.
Let's not talk about politics. Another thing you may not know is how eye contact differs in various countries. What do you think? What do you think about the eye contact rules here?
It's different for everybody, especially in this situation where we're addressing you and talking to each other.
Complicated.
So this is not necessarily
Unusual.
the best example, but I think it's a rule that you should at least maintain eye contact 40 to 50% of your conversation. If you look at someone the whole time, that's kind of weird. And if you don't look at them at all, that's also rude, I would say, or just weird.
Where else would you look if you're not looking at their eyes? Like, what do you mean when you say 50%? So 50% of the time you're looking at their eyes, and then the other 50, where are you looking?
Maybe if you're at a restaurant, you're looking at your food or off in the distance. Don't look at your phone. It's rude to look at your phone and then look up and then look. It seems like you're not giving them your full attention.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah, some people do that way more than others. 90% of the phone, 10% at you, 0% actual attention.
But that is interesting how if you look at someone for too long, it's weird. But if you don't look at them at all, it's rude. If you're looking back and forth between something, it could be considered rude. There's all these little details that we don't really think about. When I was a teacher in the classroom, I told all my students it was very important for them to not make eye contact necessarily, but to look at me so that I knew that they were paying attention and listening. But I learned over the years that in a lot of cultures, it's considered rude to make eye contact. So a lot of students from different cultures would look down and they would still be paying attention and listening, but they didn't want to be rude. That's where I think culture shock comes in and where cultural misunderstandings come in, because what's considered rude in one culture is considered a sign of respect in another. So you really have to be careful when you travel and when you're talking to people from different places to understand that maybe they're not trying to be rude, but that's just how things are done where they're from. Another thing that is considered rude here, I think, is pointing at people. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it is a little rude. I don't know. I don't know if I care that much. If somebody points at me.
It is weird, though, if you're out and a stranger's pointing at you. You might be wondering, what are they saying?
It's definitely not a welcomed gesture. But yeah, if somebody's pointing at you, you feel like a target, maybe. Just instinctively. Obviously, most times nobody's meaning it in a hostile way, I would imagine, but...
Yeah, they could just be saying, hey, look at that guy's shirt. It's orange.
Immediately you're alerted.
You kind of get defensive. One thing I've heard from people from different countries is that Americans are too politically correct and too fake to one another.
Yeah, I think that can definitely be true among any age group, but mostly younger, I think.
Yeah, and just the fact when we greet each other, we say, hey, how are you? How you doing? And we always say, great, good, how are you? And it's not really a genuine...
We don't care how you're doing most of the time. You don't go to a cashier at the grocery store and say, hey, how's it going? And expect them to say, well, I'm late on my rent and my dad's in the hospital. That's like, oh. Well, it's more of an empty gesture.
It's not very genuine, and it is kind of fake, but it's what is considered polite to do. But I guess to other cultures, it seems like we're not being real or authentic. Someone said that Americans say, oh, I love this, or I'm in love with this.
Yeah.
And that's kind of fake because you can't really be in love with an object.
Or saying that everything is amazing or awesome. Those are really the two overused. It's almost as if those words mean nothing now.
Everything's over exaggerated to seem amazing when really it's not.
It's just a pair of shoes.
Let's test your comprehension. How well did you understand the conversation Tyler and I had about etiquette in the United States? I'm going to read some statements. You decide if the statements are true or false. If the statement is false, please correct it to make it true. Here's an example for you. In the United States, it's normal to pass others while waiting in line. The answer to this would be false. Since it is false, I need to change it to make it true. I would write, it is considered rude to pass others while waiting in line. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper or device, so you can check your answers later. Use the conversation transcript and pause the video if you need to. Number 1. It is common for Americans to greet each other by giving a kiss on the cheek. Number 2. In general, Americans value their personal space. Number 3. In the United States, it is normal to show up to a doctor's appointment early. Number 4. Pointing at strangers is seen as a positive gesture in the United States. Number 5. Americans think age, politics, and money are always appropriate conversation topics. First, let's go over some important vocabulary that Tyler and I used in our conversation about etiquette. I'll go over the vocabulary word, the definition, and give a few examples. Afterwards, you'll complete a fill-in-the-blank activity to practice. The first word I want to talk about is everyday. Everyday is one word and it's an adjective, so you'll find it before nouns. It means daily, ordinary, or typical. Many people, even native English speakers, confuse this word with every day, which means each day and is two separate words. Let's look at the word every day and see how we would use it in some sentences. He won the lottery, but says his everyday life hasn't changed. It's not a fancy event, so you can wear your everyday clothes. As you can see in these sentences, the word everyday is an adjective and is found before a noun. It is used to describe something that happens daily or something that is ordinary or typical. Now let's look at some sentences using the words every day and see how they differ from the word everyday. I've had 2 cups of coffee every day this week. His classes start at 8 a.m. every day. If you're using the word everyday or the words everyday and you're still confused about which you should use, try replacing it with each day. If it makes sense, then you know you need to use the 2 separate words every day. If it doesn't, then you need to use the word everyday. Next on your vocabulary list is the phrase to be taken aback. If you're taken aback by something someone says or something someone does, this means you're surprised or shocked. For example, Andrew was taken aback by his friend's mean words. We were taken aback when she told us she was moving to Italy. In my conversation with Tyler, I mentioned that I was taken aback when our British friends kissed me on the cheek. I wasn't used to that type of greeting, so I was taken aback or surprised. The next phrase on our list is fashionably late. If you're fashionably late, this means that you arrived to an event late on purpose, either to give the appearance of nonchalance or to show that you had social engagements to attend before. There are several reasons why people like to be fashionably late. Some don't want to be the first ones to arrive at a party. Some are seeking attention when they arrive fashionably late. Others want it to seem like they are popular or busy people. Let's look at some sentences with the words fashionably late. We wanted to be fashionably late to the party. They showed up fashionably late as usual. The next word is touchy. If you're talking about an issue or a situation, then touchy means delicate. If a topic of discussion is touchy, that means it needs to be handled with care. If you're talking about a person who is touchy, that means they are sensitive. In a sentence, we might say, politics in the United States has become a touchy subject. Or if talking about a person, you could say, she's touchy when it comes to her ex-boyfriend, so don't bring him up. The next word is punctual. Punctual means on time, prompt, or not late. In a sentence, we would say, my brother is not very punctual, so we told him to arrive 15 minutes early. The teacher emphasized the importance of being punctual. In my conversation with Tyler, we discussed how Americans really value the idea of punctuality and being on time to events and appointments. Let's practice the first 5 vocabulary words we've gone over. Then we'll move on to words 6 through 10. I'm going to read 5 sentences. Each sentence has a missing word. Fill in the blank with the correct word using the 5 vocabulary words we have reviewed. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper, or a device so you can check your answers later. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Number 1. This is a subject, so let's not talk about it. Number 2. They are known for arriving to every party. Number 3. Exercising has become an activity for me. Number 4. Please be, because this meeting is extremely important. Number 5. She was when her boss told her she was fired. Let's go over the next 5 vocabulary words on our list. After we go over their meanings and some examples of each, you'll complete another fill-in-the-blank activity. The 6th phrase on our list is cut in line. To cut in line means to pass others who are waiting in line. While cutting in line isn't illegal, it is an unwritten social rule. If you cut in line or pass others who are waiting in line before your turn, you may get some angry stares or even confronted by someone. In our conversation, we talked about how cutting in line is definitely considered rude in the United States and is not a polite thing to do. In a sentence, we might say, the woman cut in line and hoped nobody would notice. The next phrase is let it slide. If you let something slide, this means that you ignore a mistake, problem, or remark without becoming angry. For example, if Tyler forgets to load the dishwasher a couple of times this week, I might let it slide. But if he forgets every day this week, I might become a little upset. In our conversation, we talked about how sometimes if people cut in line or pass others in line when it's not their turn, the people around them may let it slide if they're in a patient mood or they're not in a rush to get somewhere. Let's see how we would use let it slide in a sentence. I knew he wasn't telling the truth, but I let it slide this time. He disagreed with his wife, but didn't want to fight, so he let it slide. The next word is procedure. A procedure is an established way of doing something, usually to create order. When I was a teacher, I had to teach my students many procedures in order to keep the classroom an organized place. For example, I had to teach them the procedure of raising their hand if they wanted to talk. This way, I didn't have multiple people speaking at the same time, and I could address everyone individually. In a sentence, we might say, the staff will have a meeting to review safety procedures. The next word, heated, has 2 definitions. The first definition is the literal one, meaning warmed. For example, I heated the burrito in the microwave. The second definition of heated is passionate, excited, or intense. Tyler and I used the second definition in our conversation about etiquette in the United States. We talked about how certain discussions can become heated or passionate and intense. Let's look at some sentences using the word heated. They have a heated swimming pool. The conversation became a heated argument by the end of the night. The next word, gesture, also has 2 meanings. The first definition is talking about a body movement, usually with the hands or the head, such as a thumbs up symbol or maybe a nod. Gestures are different depending on what country you're in and the language that is spoken in that country. For example, in many English-speaking countries, the thumbs up gesture represents something positive like good job or well done. but in other countries, it can be seen as something very negative and would actually be quite rude to use. So you have to be careful about using gestures in different countries. Gesture can also refer to words and actions that show courtesy. So if somebody opens the door for you, that would be considered a polite gesture. Let's look at some sentences with both of these definitions to better understand the difference of each. They communicated to each other by gesture. It was a nice gesture on his part to send us all gifts. Let's practice the last 5 vocabulary words we've gone over. Cut in line, let it slide, procedure, heated, and gesture. I'm going to read 5 sentences. Each sentence has a missing word. Fill in the blank with the correct word using vocabulary words numbers 6 through 10. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper, or a device. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. He didn't have time to wait, so he at the coffee shop. Number 7. The situation became when he started yelling insults. Number 8. The woman gave a rude with her finger to the man driving slowly in front of her. Number 9. The teacher reviewed the classroom for fire drills with her students. Number 10. The employee arrived late to work, but luckily his boss. In today's grammar lessons, we're going to go over consonant digraphs. Sounds exciting, right? To me, consonant digraphs are actually very interesting. A consonant digraph is 2 consonants that when they come together make one consonant sound. Consonant digraphs can be tricky for non-native English speakers because some of the sounds and letter combinations simply don't exist in other languages. We're going to go over the toughest consonant digraphs, and I'm going to give you some tips and tricks so that you can pronounce these difficult letter combinations correctly. The dreaded TH. The TH is challenging because 1, it doesn't even exist in German, Mandarin, French, Japanese, just to name a few. And 2, it doesn't just make one sound, it makes 2 different sounds. But do not fear, I am here to help you conquer the TH sounds. Let's get started. Like I said before, the TH makes 2 separate sounds. The unvoiced, like in the word think, and the voiced, like in the word this. The good news for you is that both of these TH sounds require your mouth to be in the exact same position. The only difference is that the unvoiced sound does not require you to use your vocal cords, while the voiced TH sound does require the use of your vocal cords. Let's practice the unvoiced TH first. You'll hear the sound in words like think, thought, theory, bath, teeth, throw, Bethany, my name. Let's practice the word think. Stick out your tongue between your top and bottom teeth. Your tongue needs to be a little tense, so don't do this. It needs to be like this. Now in real life, English speakers don't stick their tongue out this far, and only the very tip of the tongue will be sticking out through the teeth. But in this case, it's necessary to exaggerate in order to get the sound right. So your tongue is sticking out between your teeth, slightly tense, and now you're going to breathe in air and blow out that air through your mouth. Think, think. That made me kind of dizzy. How about you? Let's zoom in and see how it would look in real life. Think. Think. Many times, non-native speakers will replace the unvoiced TH sound with a T sound, t, t, or an S sound, s, s. As you can see, neither of those sounds require the tongue to come out between the teeth. So you can hear the difference between t, s. So a non-native English speaker might try to say the word third and end up saying turd. Not exactly the same thing. Another example is a non-native speaker might be trying to say thank you, but instead will say thank you. Now let's move on to the voiced TH, like in the words this, that, there, than, bathe, father, and mother. Like I said, your mouth position is going to stay exactly the same for this TH sound as it did for the last TH sound. The only difference is you're going to hold your hand on your throat and your vocal cords should vibrate during this one. So stick out your tongue between your teeth, blow out air, and engage your vocal cords. This one's tricky. Let's practice with the word this. 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 Let's see what this looks like zoomed in. This. Many times I'll hear non-native speakers replace the voiced TH sound with a D sound. D. Once again, as you can see, the D sound does not require the tongue to come through the teeth, and the TH voice sound does. So if your tongue is not poking out between your teeth, you're not saying this sound right. You may hear a non-native English speaker say this instead of this, or dat instead of that. Let's do a quick review. The unvoiced TH sound, like in the word think, requires your tongue to poke out between your top and bottom teeth. Your tongue should be a little tense, and you should blow out air without using your vocal cords. For the voiced TH sound, your mouth and tongue is in the exact same position, but this time you're engaging your vocal cords. That, this, there. Let's practice pronouncing some complete sentences using these two sounds. I'll say the sentence and then you repeat the sentence after me. They think she will get there at noon. Thanks for giving the kids a bath. My father is shorter than my mother. And yes, while practicing this sound, you're going to feel weird. You're going to feel awkward. And you might spit all over the place. But that's okay, and it's completely normal. Don't worry if you don't get the sound right away. It takes a lot of practice, and English speakers will still understand you. But if you want to sound like a true native English speaker, learning how to pronounce the TH correctly will help you tremendously. Now let's practice listening for and pronouncing the TH sounds. I'm going to read some sentences. Listen carefully and write the sentence. Spell the best that you can. After you write the sentence, read the sentence aloud to practice your pronunciation of the TH sounds. Pause the video to give yourself enough time. Number 1. Thanks for making the coffee this morning. Thanks for making the coffee this morning. Number 2. Bethany took a bath and then she got dressed. Bethany took a bath and then she got dressed. Number 3. The thick branches have thorns. The thick branches have thorns. Number 4. That boy is thin. That boy is thin. Number 5. My father loves my mother even though she talks too much. My father loves my mother even though she talks too much. The next consonant digraph I want to discuss is GH. In English, the letters GH can make 3 different sounds. They can make a hard G sound, G. They can make an F sound, F. Or they can be silent. Let's review the first sound the GH can make, G. GH will always sound like G at the beginning of words, such as ghost. There are a couple of words where GH is not found at the beginning of the word, but still sounds like G. For example, aghast and spaghetti. Because there are only a few words where the GH sounds like G, we're going to review those words first. I'll say the word a couple of times, and I'll also read a sentence using that word. Repeat the word and the sentence after me. The first word is ghastly. Ghastly. The detectives described the ghastly murder to their colleagues. Ghost. Ghost. The little girl dressed up as a ghost for Halloween. Ghee. Ghee. They cooked the meal in ghee instead of traditional butter. Ghoul. Ghoul. A ghoul is an imaginary evil creature that feeds on the dead. Spaghetti. Spaghetti. I ate spaghetti for dinner last night. The next sound the letters GH can make is an F sound, like in the word laugh. Or it can be silent, like in the words though or right. Unfortunately, there's no rule to let you know when the GH will sound like an F, or when it will be silent. There's not too many words where the GH sounds like F, so let's review those next. I'll say the word a couple of times, and I'll also read a sentence with the word. Repeat the word and the sentence after me. The first word is laugh. You'll also see this word in words like laughter and laughing. I love my husband because he always makes me laugh. The next word is cough. Cough. I feel better, but I still have a cough. Enough. Enough. I've had enough to eat. The next two words I'm going to group with enough because they rhyme with enough. Tough. Tough. He likes to act tough. Rough. Rough. I've had a rough day at work. Lastly, let's go over the words where GH is silent. There are lots of words where the GH is silent or makes a specific sound based on the vowels around it. Again, I'll say the word a couple of times and read a sentence with that word. Please repeat the word and the sentence after me. The first word is through. Through. He walked through the door. The next word is bought. Bought. She had to return the dress she bought. There are some words that rhyme with bought and also have the same spelling, so I've grouped these words with bought. Brought. Brought. He brought his girlfriend to the party. Fought. Fought. They fought with each other every day. Thought. Thought. The musicians thought they would become famous. Caught. Caught. The little boy caught the ball. Now you'll notice that caught rhymes with bought in the words above, but it has a little bit of a different spelling. It's spelled A-U-G-H instead of O-U-G-H, so I grouped it separately. There are some other words that have the same spelling pattern and also rhyme with caught. Taught. Taught. The teacher taught the students how to do algebra. Daughter. Daughter. He had one daughter and two sons. The next word is though. Though. I stayed at work until midnight, even though I was exhausted. Some words that have the same spelling pattern and rhyme with though are dough. Dough. They made homemade pizza dough. Although. Although. Although it was cold outside, I decided I didn't want to wear a jacket. Thorough. Thorough. Because she did such a thorough job, we decided to hire her full-time. The next word is might. Might. The storm might have caused damage to the roof. There are lots of words that have this IGH pattern in them, and they all make a long I sound. Some examples are Sight. Sight. The airplane flew out of sight. Right. Right. You should know the difference between right and wrong. Fight. Fight. They got into a fight at school. Night. Night. Owls are nocturnal creatures, meaning they're more active at night. Sigh. Sigh. She let out a big sigh when she found out she had to work again tomorrow. The next word is 8. 8. My favorite number is 8. Now before I said the IGH sound makes a long I sound, which is true unless there's an E in front of it, which would make it EIGH. EIGH makes a long A sound, like in the word 8. There are some other words that have the same spelling and sound, so we'll group these with the word 8. Weight. Weight. She entered her weight into the exercise app. Weigh. Weigh. The oranges weigh more than the bananas. Sleigh. Sleigh. They used a sleigh to slide down the snowy hill. Neighbor. Neighbor. The upstairs neighbor is really noisy. Now let's practice what you've learned in Grammar Lesson 2. I'm going to read some sentences. I want you to listen carefully and to write the sentence down, spelling the best that you can. I'll read the sentence twice, one time slowly and one time a little faster. Do not look at the answers until you've completed the activity. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Use the worksheets provided, a piece of paper, or a device. Number 1. Are you more scared of ghosts or ghouls? Are you more scared of ghosts or ghouls? Number 2. I've had enough of this cough. I've had enough of this cough. Number 3. He bought a shirt for his daughter. He bought a shirt for his daughter. Number 4. Even though they fought a lot, they were still good friends. Even though they fought a lot, they were still good friends. Number 5. My neighbor brought me apple pie last night. My neighbor brought me apple pie last night. The next consonant digraphs I want to talk about are CH, ch, and SH, sh. I put these consonant digraphs together because they are extremely similar. Both are voiceless or unvoiced, meaning that your throat will not vibrate when you say them. Ch, sh. While they are similar, they do have their differences. Let's go over CH, ch first. When producing the sound CH, ch, you'll notice that the tip of your tongue touches the roof or the top of your mouth. You'll also notice that your lips are pushed forward. The only way to get better at pronouncing the CH sound, ch, is practicing it. Tyler and I used several words in our conversation that had the CH, ch sound in them. Let's review these words together. I'll say the word a couple of times, and I'll also read a sentence containing the word. Please repeat the word and the sentence after me. Cheek. Cheek. He gave her a kiss on the cheek. Which. Which. Which car should we take? Much. Much. She didn't give much thought to her brother's comment. Touchy. Touchy. She's a bit touchy when it comes to her ex-boyfriend. Lunch. Lunch. I had a big lunch, so I'm not that hungry. Teacher. Teacher. I really like my teacher. For extra practice with the ch sound, try repeating this tongue twister. The child watched his teacher write with chalk. The child watched his teacher write with chalk. The next consonant digraph is sh, sh. As you can hear, ch and sh make a similar sound, ch, sh. The difference with the sound sh is that the tongue does not touch the roof of the mouth. Instead, the sides of the tongue touch the top teeth and your lips are slightly parted. You'll also notice that it takes more breath from the belly to pronounce the sh sound. So you should be able to hold this sound for a few seconds. You may hear a teacher tell her student, shh, which means to be quiet. Tyler and I used several words with the sh, sh sound in our conversation. I'm going to say these words that we use that have the sh, sh sound, and I would like you to again repeat after me and repeat the sentence that I read as well. The first word is handshake. Handshake. The man had a firm handshake. Show. Show. My favorite TV show comes on at 8 o'clock. Spanish. Spanish. I speak a little Spanish. Should. Should. The actor should practice his lines if he wants the part. Rush. Rush. Don't rush or you'll do a bad job. She. She. She is 37 years old. Shirt. Shirt. He had to buy a black shirt for work. For extra practice with the sound sh, sh, try this tongue twister. She sells seashells down by the seashore. She sells seashells down by the seashore. Now let's practice what you've learned in Grammar Lesson 3. I'm going to read some sentences. I want you to listen carefully and to write the sentence down, spelling the best that you can. I'll read the sentence twice, one time slowly and one time a little faster. Do not look at the answers until you've completed the activity. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Use the worksheets provided, a piece of paper, or a device. Number 1. The teacher ate lunch in his classroom. The teacher ate lunch in his classroom. Number 2. She doesn't speak much Spanish. She doesn't speak much Spanish. Number 3. He bought a shirt for the rock show. He bought a shirt for the rock show. Number 4. Which game should we play? Which game should we play? Number 5. They kissed each other on the cheek. They kissed each other on the cheek. Now let's practice your writing. I'm going to read some questions. After each question, pause the video and write your answers in English, being as detailed as you can. Write a full paragraph or more. You may use the conversation transcript and any other resource to help you write your responses. If possible, discuss your answers with a friend in English to practice your speaking. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper, or a device. Because answers will vary, there is no answer key to this section. Number 1. Do you think pointing at people is rude? Why or why not? Number 2. What would you do if someone cut in line to get ahead of you? Would you let it slide? Has that ever happened to you before? Number 3. What are some touchy topics of discussion that you would feel uncomfortable bringing up during conversation? Why? Number 4. What are some examples of appropriate hand gestures? What are some examples of rude hand gestures? Hi everyone, it's Bethany and I'm here with my husband Tyler, and in today's lesson we're going to be talking about the daily schedule of an average American. So let's start off with mornings. What does the average American do when they first wake up?
Well, there's things they should do, like brush their teeth, take a shower maybe if you have time.
I think a lot of people say they brush their teeth the first thing when they wake up in the morning, but I have a confession. I eat breakfast first and then brush my teeth because to me it doesn't really make sense to brush your teeth before you eat.
As long as you brush your teeth at least twice a day. I think that's the rule.
What time do you get up in the morning?
I would say between 6 and 8 a.m.
And we have more of a relaxed schedule than most people because we work at home.
We set our own hours.
What do you think is the average time in the morning that Americans wake up?
7:30.
Ooh, you're pretty close. The average wake up time for Americans is 7:08 a.m. So that was a little bit earlier than what you said?
A little earlier than what I thought, but that's good. You don't want to be scrambling.
So I would say the average American gets up, eats breakfast, takes a shower, and gets to work around 9. And then what time do you think is the average lunch time?
Well, it used to be noon is like the lunchtime, but I think people eat lunch either earlier or later than that. So an early lunch is probably 11 a.m. Late lunch is 1 p.m. maybe.
So somewhere between 11 and 1 is the average lunch break.
Is it different in other cultures?
I think some places in Europe, lunch and all meals are a little bit later in the day.
Okay.
So lunch might be at 2 or 3 and dinner is at 8 or 9. How long do you think lunch breaks are?
In the United States? I mean, I know from experience, 30 minutes. An hour is a good lunch break, but normally they're less than that.
A lot of professions don't give an adequate lunch break.
It's a problem.
As a teacher, I think by the time I took my kids to lunch and then came back to my classroom to eat, I had a total of 15 minutes.
Not enough time.
So then after work gets done around 5 p.m. We come home, we eat dinner at what time?
6?
I think that's an early dinner.
Yeah, we eat early meals normally.
But I would say anywhere from 5:30 to 7:30.
Normally the dinner's over by 8. If you're having a late dinner, you're not having it past 7:15 or 7:30. The average dinner, I would say, like 6:30, 7 o'clock.
What time do you think the average bedtime is?
10.
The average bedtime is 11:40 p.m.
Whoa. I bet you it used to be earlier, but now it's later because of people watching streaming videos and just the internet in general.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty late, 11:40. I thought it would be earlier. What if we had kids? What would their schedule look like?
How old?
School-aged. And school starts at around 8 a.m.
So then that means they have to wake up around 6 or 6:30. Maybe that's too early. I don't know. I don't have any kids.
And then they are at school until around 3 unless they have after-school activities, which I bet a lot of parents put their kids in after-school activities because they're working until 5. What kind of after-school activities were you involved in as a child?
I played sports, so soccer and baseball, basketball, clubs.
What clubs were you in?
I don't know.
I was in Spanish club
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
and anchor club, which was basically volunteering.
Wow.
I played soccer, ran cross country, and ran track at one point.
Track and field?
Well, no, not the field part.
Oh, what event did you do?
The 800 and the 1600 meter. Did you run track?
I ran the 100-meter dash and the 4x100-meter relay.
Do you remember how late your after-school activities ran?
Normally it wouldn't go past 5:30.
But I remember games were kind of late.
Yeah, games would be at 7 maybe.
I remember on game nights, we would eat dinner in the car really late.
I drove almost 2 hours away for some games, so I wouldn't get home until midnight some nights.
Let's talk about what we do on the weekend in our free time.
Well, I would say one thing we almost always do is go out to eat somewhere. It's a nighttime activity. Go to the movies. When it's nice outside, maybe we'll go hiking.
We like to do housework too on the weekend. I think during the week you're so busy with work and kids, if you have kids, that chores in the house are second to all of those things. So you catch up on the weekend.
Yep. Now let's go over some facts about the daily schedule of an average American.
The first fact is that Americans spend 8 times as many hours working as they do eating and drinking.
That's right in line with all the stuff we've discussed.
And that makes sense because you're working every day or almost every day, 5 days a week.
And that's an average 40-hour work week.
So you're not spending 40 hours eating and drinking. So that one makes sense to me.
Unless you're a bodybuilder.
The next fact is that we spend half of our leisure time. Can you guess?
Watching TV?
He's good, yeah. We didn't mention that when we were talking about what we like to do on the weekend, but we also watch TV.
I do that every day.
That's true. And there is leisure time after work.
Between when you get home, dinner time, then dinner time till bed.
Do you think we're like average Americans in that we spend about half of our leisure time watching TV, or do you think we watch TV more or less?
I bet it's more.
We watch a lot of TV.
But that's okay. There's a lot of stuff to watch. And it's not just TV, it's all the internet streaming, and maybe that has to do with internet, like being on your phone or iPad or something.
Screen time.
Yeah, screen time.
We talked about how we spend most of our weekend doing leisure activities, but do you think any Americans work on the weekend?
Yep, I work on the weekend sometimes. When you have to catch up or if you're trying to get ahead. It really depends on your job. If you're working at a retail job or something like that, obviously you're only working when you're at the workplace, but some people who work from home or have a profession like they're a doctor or a lawyer, maybe they're on call or a pilot. There's a lot of different scenarios where you might have to work on the weekend.
When I was a teacher, I remember bringing work home during the week and working on the weekends as well.
Your day went beyond the 9 to 5. Yours was like 7 to 7 sometimes, but you only got paid for that 9 to 5 window.
So basically, the average American wakes up, brushes his or her teeth, goes to work, doesn't have a lunch break, keeps working, comes home, continues working, and then watches TV.
And does it all over again, and then goes for a hike occasionally.
Before we move on to vocabulary and grammar, let's test your comprehension. How well did you understand the conversation that Tyler and I had about Americans' daily schedule? I'm going to read some statements. I want you to decide if the statement is true or false. If the statement is false, then correct it to make it true. Write in English in complete sentences. Use the worksheets provided, a piece of paper, or a device. Pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Here's an example problem for you. Everyone in the United States is given an hour lunch break. The answer to this would be false. Since it is false, I need to change it to make it true. I would write something like, lunch breaks vary depending on what job a person has. Number 1, the average time Americans wake up is 7:08 a.m. Number 2, Tyler guessed that 8 a.m. is the average time Americans wake up. Number 3, dinner at 8:30 p.m. would be considered a late dinner in the United States. Number 4, the average bedtime for Americans is 10:15 p.m. Number 5, Tyler played hockey and golf when he was a child. Now let's practice some important vocabulary that you heard in our conversation earlier. I'll go over the word or phrase and its definition and then provide an example for you. Then later, you'll complete an activity to practice this vocabulary. Before I review the words, don't forget to repeat each word after me each time I say it. The first word on your vocabulary list is schedule. Schedule. A schedule is a plan of events or activities to be carried out at specific times. Some people write down parts of their schedule by making a list. They may write down events or activities such as appointments, meetings, parties, or things that they need to get done. In our conversation, we were talking about the general schedule of an average American. We talked about when Americans wake up, what time they go to work, meal times, and bedtime. Here's a couple of sentences with the word schedule. She couldn't make a dentist appointment for that day because her schedule was too full. He had to check his schedule first before he accepted the invitation. The next phrase on your list is make sense. Make sense. If something makes sense, then it has a clear meaning or is reasonable. If something doesn't make sense, then that means it doesn't have a clear meaning or it isn't reasonable. In our conversation, I stated how brushing your teeth before you eat doesn't make sense to me. Or in other words, brushing your teeth before you eat doesn't seem reasonable to me. In a sentence, we might say, the teacher's lesson didn't make sense. Or, it makes sense to sell our house before we buy a new one. The next phrase is get up. Get up. To get up means to arise from bed or to get out of bed. Get up is a little different than wake up. Wake up means you're opening your eyes and you're becoming conscious after sleeping. Get up means actually getting out of bed and starting your day. Get up can also mean to stand up. Let's look at 2 sentences that use get up. What time do you get up in the morning? The old woman fell and couldn't get up. The next word is scrambling. Scrambling. To scramble means to move quickly or to hurry. If you're scrambling, you're trying to get something done quickly or to get somewhere quickly. In our conversation, Tyler mentioned how in the morning you don't want to be scrambling. You don't want to be rushing around or hurried while you're getting ready. In a sentence, we might say, they were scrambling to find a good seat in the movie theater. The next word is adequate. Adequate. Adequate means enough or sufficient. In our conversation, we talked about how many teachers in the United States don't have an adequate lunch break, or in other words, they don't have a sufficient lunch break. Right now, many teachers across America are going on strike, demanding adequate pay and better teaching conditions. Let's look at a sentence using the word adequate. The office isn't perfect, but it's adequate for my needs. Let's practice the first 5 vocabulary words and phrases we've gone over. Schedule, make sense, get up, scrambling, and adequate. I'm going to read 5 sentences. Each sentence has a missing word or phrase. Fill in the blank with the correct word using vocabulary words numbers 1 through 5. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper, or a device. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Number 1, it doesn't to clean up before the kids play. Number 2, it's time to and eat breakfast. Number 3, everyone needs to drink an amount of water each day. Number 4, he didn't have any time slots available in his to see them. Number 5. When he picked her up for their date, she was to get ready. Let's review the last 5 words on your vocabulary list. After I go over the definition and some examples of each, you'll complete another fill-in-the-blank activity for these words. The 6th phrase on your list is catch up. Catch up. The phrase catch up has a few different meanings. In our conversation, we were talking about how on the weekend, some people catch up on their housework. So in this case, catch up means to complete work or tasks that you didn't have time to do earlier. In a sentence, you might say, I need to catch up on the paperwork today because I didn't finish it yesterday. The next word is bodybuilder. Bodybuilder. A bodybuilder is a person who spends time strengthening or enlarging his or her muscles. In our conversation, we talked about how Americans spend more time working than eating and drinking. And Tyler joked, unless you're a bodybuilder, because bodybuilders spend most of their time eating and drinking. In a sentence, we might say, a bodybuilder has to spend hours in the gym every day. The next word is leisure. Leisure. Leisure is free time or time spent away from work doing things that you like to do. In our conversation, we talked about how many Americans spend their leisure time watching TV. Other leisure activities include hiking, biking, gardening, listening to music, or reading. In a sentence, we might say, she spends most of her leisure time reading. Or, her leisure was devoted to studying animals. The next phrase is screen time. Screen time. In this context, screen time is the amount of time a person spends on a device such as a computer, iPad, cell phone, or gaming console. In our conversation, we talked about how the internet and screen time is a major part of American leisure. In a sentence, we might say, his mother monitored his screen time to prevent him from watching TV all night. The last phrase on your list is on call. On call means able to be contacted to come into work. So you're not formally on duty, but you are available if needed. My dad has a job where on some weekends he's on call, meaning he has his cell phone with him in case his boss calls and tells him he needs to come into work. Many doctors are on call, meaning they're available to be contacted in case of an emergency. In a sentence, we might say, she was unable to attend the concert because she was on call that weekend. Let's practice the last 5 vocabulary words and phrases we've gone over. Catch up, bodybuilder, leisure, screen time, and on call. I'm going to read 5 sentences. Each sentence has a missing word or phrase. Fill in the blank with the correct word or phrase using vocabulary words numbers 6 through 10. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper, or a device. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Number 6. In his time, he likes to swim, write, and watch Netflix. Number 7. He tries to limit his to an hour a day. Number 8. The nurse is tonight in case there is an emergency. Number 9. The secretary will on her to-do list tomorrow. Number 10. The little boy says he wants to be a when he grows up. In today's grammar lessons, we're going to be talking about apostrophes. In English, we use apostrophes on 2 occasions, for contractions and for possessives. First, we're going to talk about how we use apostrophes for contractions. A contraction is when we take 2 words and combine them together. When we do this, we take out a letter, or sometimes multiple letters, and replace them with an apostrophe. For example, let's look at the word weave. We took 2 words, we have, and combined them together. We took out 2 letters, HA, and replaced them with an apostrophe to make weave. In my conversation with Tyler, we used contractions a lot. In formal writing, you probably won't see many contractions, but in regular conversation, they are used all the time. Let's look at some of the contractions Tyler and I used in our conversation. I'm. Here, we combined I am. We took out the A and replaced it with an apostrophe. Wheel. This is short for we will. Here, we took out the WI and replaced it with an apostrophe. Aren't. Aren't is short for are not. Doesn't. Does not. Don't is short for do not. It's. It's combines the words it is. It can also stand for it has, where we replace the HA with an apostrophe. For example, it's been 6 years since I've seen you. It has been 6 years since I've seen you. Or, it's her birthday. It is her birthday. The only contraction where the rule for replacing the letters with an apostrophe doesn't work is in the word won't. Won't is short for will not. There's no such word as won't. It's simply won't, and that's the only one that doesn't fit the rule. Grammar Activity 1A. Now let's practice what you've learned in Grammar Activity 1. I'm going to read sentences containing words that can be turned into a contraction. Change the words into a contraction using an apostrophe. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper, or a device so you can check your answers later. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Do not look at the answers until you've completed the activity. Let's look at an example problem. I am feeling sick today. As you can see, the words I am are underlined. What I want you to do is to change the underlined words into a contraction using an apostrophe. The answer would be, I'm feeling sick today. Number 1, we have had a long day. Number 2, I am beautiful. Number 3, it has been raining for an hour. Number 4, do not talk when the teacher is talking. Number 5, she will not come to the party. Grammar Activity 1B. I'm going to read sentences containing contractions. Separate the contraction to create 2 separate words. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper or device so you can check your answers later. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Do not look at the answers until you've completed the activity. Let's look at an example. I'm going to the grocery store. As you can see, the contraction I'm is underlined. Change I'm to the 2 separate words it represents. The answer would be, I am going to the grocery store. Number 1, if it doesn't stop raining, I won't be able to go for a run. Number 2, it's almost bedtime. Number 3, the kids aren't laughing at my jokes. Number 4, we'll see you tomorrow. Number 5, I'm going to be late. Let's talk about the second way we use apostrophes in the English language. While we use apostrophes for contractions, we also use them for possessives. We use the apostrophe to show that something or someone owns something. To do this, we not only use an apostrophe, but we also use the letter S. When talking about possession, you'll see an apostrophe paired with the letter S. We use the apostrophe S to show that someone or something owns something. For example, my brother's dog. Here we use an apostrophe S to show that the dog belongs to my brother. The woman's hat. So this means the hat of the woman or the hat belonging to the woman. The child's toys. The toys of the child or the toys belonging to the child. My mom's car. In English, you wouldn't say, I drove the car of my mom. You would say, I drove my mom's car. People would understand what you're trying to say, but it wouldn't be correct. To describe something that belongs to someone, you always have to use an apostrophe S. Now let's practice what you've learned in Grammar Activity 2. I'm going to read some sentences that are incorrect. Correct the sentence using the possessive apostrophe S. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper or a device, so you can check your answers later. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Do not look at the answers until you've completed the activity. Here's an example for you. The shirt of the man had dinosaurs on it. This sentence is incorrect, so I need to correct it using the possessive apostrophe S. The correct answer would be, the man's shirt had dinosaurs on it. Number 1. The coat of the doctor is white. Number 2. The hair of Jane is long and blonde. Number 3. We went to the house of John last night. Number 4. She walked to the shop of her grandma. Number 5. The headline of the newspaper shocked them. Now let's practice what you've learned in Grammar Activity 2. I'm going to read some sentences that are incorrect. Correct the sentence using the possessive apostrophe S. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper or a device, so you can check your answers later. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Do not look at the answers until you've completed the activity. Here's an example for you. The shirt of the man had dinosaurs on it. This sentence is incorrect, so I need to correct it using the possessive apostrophe S. The correct answer would be, the man's shirt had dinosaurs on it. Number 1. The coat of the doctor is white. Number 2. The hair of Jane is long and blonde. Number 3. We went to the house of John last night. Number 4. She walked to the shop of her grandma. Number 5. The headline of the newspaper shocked them. Now let's practice your writing. Write the answers to these questions in English. Be as detailed as you can. You may use the transcript and any other resource to help you write your responses. If possible, discuss these questions with a friend in English. Number 1. What time do you wake up every day? What time do you get up every day? What are some of the first things you do in the morning? Number 2. How long is your lunch break? What do you normally eat for lunch? Do you think you have an adequate amount of time to eat lunch? Number 3. What are some things you like to do in your leisure time? Number 4. What is your daily schedule like? Write about what you do when you wake up until the time you go to sleep. Hi everyone, I'm Bethany and I'm here with my husband Tyler, and today's topic of discussion is becoming an entrepreneur.
This will be fun.
I have some questions for you.
Okay.
What were some of your first jobs that you ever had?
My first job was at an electronics store, and I sold car stereo systems. And I was 16 years old.
Would you say you know a lot about car stereo systems now?
No. I wasn't good at that job. I shouldn't have had it, but I learned a little bit more than I knew going in, which was nothing.
How many systems did you sell?
A lot. I was good at selling things, even if I didn't know what I was talking about.
You sell things now, just in a different way.
Maybe I found my calling. It was just in the wrong field.
So then after that, what other jobs did you have?
I worked at a coffee shop. I worked in a computer lab at my school. I sold furniture.
And when we met, what job did you have?
I think I was a retail associate at a hotel.
Always selling things.
Yeah. I eventually ended up working for Apple. I was an advisor for customers who had trouble with their iPhones.
Like tech support?
Yeah.
And now, what do you do? Would you call yourself an entrepreneur?
Yes, because I am my own boss.
What do you think the definition of entrepreneur is?
Somebody who forms a career based on their own skills and hard work.
That's pretty good. What's your exact job now? How do you make money?
My exact job is I run an online education subscription service for guitar players. I teach guitar lessons to people on the internet.
So how did you first start your journey of becoming an entrepreneur?
Well, I found out a lot of things that I didn't want to do with my life. And so I just kept trying new things until I figured something out that I enjoyed, because that's the key to being a successful entrepreneur, is to like what you do.
You started on YouTube first, right?
Yeah. Well, no. First I made a course curriculum with a bunch of different videos, and then I didn't have anybody to sell that to because nobody knew who I was.
Uh-huh.
So then I tried to make videos on Facebook.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And that would be to get people to be aware of me. And then if they liked my Facebook videos, which were usually funny videos, humorous, entertaining, if they liked those, then they would discover that I also taught guitar lessons and potentially give me some money to teach them.
So you built an audience, let people get to know you, gave them free content, and then that led to them buying your course later on.
Yeah, if they wanted more, they could pay to have the cream of the crop lessons, which were not available for free.
And that's kind of your system now, right?
Yeah, now I use YouTube as the top of the funnel. And then as people see those videos and learn the lessons and watch the skits and things like that, they eventually arrive at the paywall where they can choose to pay for premium content.
Do you like being an entrepreneur? What do you like about it?
Nobody can tell me what to do.
You're your own boss.
Yeah, and I get to make my own choices and work when I want to, which there's probably a misconception that you can never work and it will still all happen, which is actually the opposite. I work more now than I ever did in any of my other jobs.
But you do have a more flexible schedule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can travel when we want to, and I can work remotely.
So we've talked about some of the advantages of being an entrepreneur, but what are the disadvantages?
One main disadvantage is that your brain never turns off. So I'm never really fully removed. I'm relying pretty much on just myself to keep it going. So there's some sort of pressure, but
I do think that's a lot of pressure though, because your entire living depends on how much and how hard you work. So it's a lot of pressure on yourself.
But I thrive under pressure.
Okay, now I have some facts for you.
Mm-hmm.
The first fact is that 10% of Americans are self-employed.
Okay.
Does that number seem reasonable to you?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So you're in with the 10% of Americans who are entrepreneurs. That's a small number, I thought.
I would say a lot of them are musicians too. Because I can't think of a lot of people I know who are self-employed who aren't musicians.
Maybe in Silicon Valley,
Yeah.
all of the tech people are entrepreneurs.
Yeah, startups across the country.
The next fact is that 95% of entrepreneurs have a bachelor's degree. Do you have a bachelor's degree?
I do.
What is your bachelor's degree in?
In professional music, which isn't a very descriptive title, but the concentration is in performance, guitar performance.
I'd say you're putting that to good use, right?
Yeah, it's worked out.
The next fact is that 70% of entrepreneurs are married. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, I wouldn't be able to do what I do without your support.
Aw, that's a sweet answer.
Having some sort of significant other is important because it's really hard to be an entrepreneur, which is why there's only 10% of our country that can do it. So I think sharing that burden with somebody is important.
Yeah, having a support system is helpful when you're creating something brand new.
Mm-hmm.
The next fact is that the average entrepreneur works 66 hours a week compared to the average American worker who works 47 hours a week.
Mm-hmm. That sounds about right.
So you work a lot.
I used to work like 7 days a week for 10 to 12 hours a day.
So that is a big misconception. A lot of people think when you work from home, you get to do whatever you want, you get to be lazy, but it's the exact opposite.
You can do that, you just won't be able to succeed.
The next fact is that 90% of startups fail.
I would think it's higher. I was involved in other startup businesses that didn't go anywhere, but this was one that was really all me. So I could work on it day and night and didn't have to rely on anybody else to make decisions or control the vision.
But really, you started this and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty amazing since 90% of startups fail.
Yeah, I think I'm lucky. That may have something to do with it.
Or talented, or both.
Yeah, luck, skill, it's a blend of all of it.
Okay, I have 2 more questions for you. The first one is, do you think this job of being an entrepreneur will be your forever job?
Yeah, in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if I'm going to be doing this exact thing in 20 years. I'd like to be some sort of advisor maybe, or something like that. I'd like to travel around and give talks to people. I don't know.
Still be an entrepreneur, but kind of evolve into, or maybe expand into other areas.
Yeah, I'd always like to be in music, that's for sure. Or film. That could be another direction that's interesting as well.
Okay, last question is, what advice would you give to others out there who are interested in becoming an entrepreneur?
Well, you have to be really, really good at whatever it is you're trying to do. Or become really good at something. But the point is you have to really love something.
So you have to be passionate about something and then either be good at it or become good at it.
And that's before you even start with the business side.
So any other advice for starting the business side of it?
Yes, set a big goal and then 3 medium goals that when reached will fuel the big goal, and then 10 little goals that will help you reach those 3 medium goals. And if you detail what those are, it will help your workload and help you determine how to spend your time most effectively, and it won't allow you to be so overwhelmed by the thought of that big goal. A lot of people just go right after the big goal, take stepping stones up to the big goal with those smaller goals.
Do you think with those goals there should be a timeline or not? a timeline to reach those goals or not?
It depends on what's called a runway in the business world. It depends how long your runway is. So if you have another job and you're doing your entrepreneurial endeavor on the side, your runway could be very long. If you quit your job because you just can't take it anymore, then maybe your runway is a lot shorter. Both can work, but I would recommend working really hard at the entrepreneurial thing while you're also sustaining a normal income so you don't stress yourself out.
Well, that was a fabulous conversation about becoming an entrepreneur. Thank you for your time, Tyler.
Bye-bye.
Before we move on to vocabulary and grammar, let's test your comprehension. How well did you understand the conversation about becoming an entrepreneur? I'm going to read some statements. Decide whether they are true or false. If the statement is false, change the statement to make it true. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper, or a device so you can check your answers later. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Here's an example for you. Tyler's first job was at an ice cream parlor. The answer to this would be false. Since it is false, I need to change it to make it true. I would write something like, Tyler's first job was at an electronics store selling car stereo systems. Number 1. The average entrepreneur works less than the average American worker. Number 2. 50% of startups fail. Number 3. Tyler worked as a retail associate when he met Bethany. Number 4. 10% of Americans are self-employed. Number 5. Tyler has worked at a coffee shop, worked for Apple, and sold furniture. Now let's review some important vocabulary you heard in our conversation about becoming an entrepreneur. Some of these words may be a review for you, and some of them you may have never heard before. I'll pronounce the word and go over an example, and then you'll practice using the word later in the activity that follows. Please repeat the word after I say it. The first word is content. Content. When talking about websites or online platforms such as YouTube, content refers to the information made available by that website or platform. In our conversation, I was talking with Tyler about how at first he provided free content, or in other words, he provided free information. In a sentence, we might say, I like the YouTuber's personality, but his content lacks entertainment. Don't confuse the word content with content. These two words are spelled exactly the same, but they're pronounced a little bit differently. Content, content. Content means happy or satisfied, so it means something completely different from content. The next phrase is cream of the crop. Cream of the crop. This phrase is actually an idiom, and it means the best of all, or the best of the batch. It can be used as a noun without hyphens, such as, the company only wanted to hire the cream of the crop. In our conversation, Tyler used it as an adjective. So when it's used as an adjective, you have to add hyphens. For example, Tyler said, if people like my free content and want more, they can pay for my cream of the crop lessons. Or in other words, they can pay for the best of the lessons that he has available. The next word is paywall. A paywall is a feature on a website that prevents you from accessing certain content unless you've paid for it. So in our conversation, we were talking about how if people want Tyler's cream of the crop lessons or the best lessons that he has available, they would be led to the website and they wouldn't be able to access those lessons until they paid. There are a couple of different ways you can use the word paywall in a sentence. Tyler said that his followers will eventually arrive at the paywall, meaning that they will eventually arrive to a feature on his website that prompts them to put in their credit card information. You could also say the online magazine subscription put up a paywall to tell their readers that they have to pay for extra content. The next word is misconception. A misconception is an incorrect view or idea. Many times people have misconceptions due to faulty information or flawed thinking. In our conversation, we talked about how there's a misconception that entrepreneurs cannot work a lot and still be successful. Entrepreneurs actually work more hours than the average American worker. In a sentence, we might say, there's a misconception that with fame and fortune comes happiness. So in this sentence, we're saying there's an incorrect idea out there that exists among people that if you become rich and famous, you'll be happy. But in reality, that's not true. The next word is advantage. Advantage. An advantage is a benefit or something that provides a good result. In our conversation, we talked about the advantages or the benefits of being an entrepreneur. We talked about how entrepreneurs have flexible work hours, can work remotely, and have complete control of their work. On the other hand, there are disadvantages of being an entrepreneur or things that do not provide a good result. Disadvantages of being an entrepreneur are the pressure put on oneself to succeed and the long work hours that come with being an entrepreneur. In a sentence, we might say, the best advantage of working at home is being able to wear your pajamas to work. Let's practice the first 5 vocabulary words and phrases we've gone over. Content, cream of the crop, paywall, misconception, and advantage. I'm going to read 5 sentences. Each sentence has a missing word or phrase. Fill in the blank with the correct word using vocabulary words numbers 1 through 5. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper, or a device. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Number 1. The restaurant only hired chefs. Number 2. The YouTuber used expensive cameras and equipment, but her videos lacked quality. Number 3. There is that becoming famous will solve all of a person's problems. Number 4. He was discouraged to discover the link led him to asking for his credit card information. Number 5. The only of living next to my mother is that she occasionally cooks dinner for me. The 6th word on your vocabulary list is thrive. Thrive. Thrive means to succeed, grow, flourish, or prosper. In our conversation, Tyler said that he thrives under pressure, or in other words, he succeeds under pressure. In a sentence, we might say, his business will thrive if he continues working diligently. The next word is self-employed. Self-employed. Self-employed means working for oneself or owning your own company or business. In our conversation, we talked about how 10% of Americans are self-employed or run their own business. Tyler said that he thought many of the people that are self-employed in the United States are musicians and make money by playing their own music. Here's a sentence that uses the word self-employed. He is a teacher, but his dream is to become self-employed. The next word is startup. Startup. A startup is a new company in its first stages of operation. Tyler and I talked about how people who have startups are self-employed. We also discussed Silicon Valley, which is a region in California where many startups and technology companies exist. In a sentence, we might say, the startup earned millions of dollars in its first year. The next word is advice. Advice. Advice is an opinion or recommendation regarding a decision. In our conversation, I asked Tyler to give some advice to people who may want to become an entrepreneur. Or in other words, I wanted him to give his opinion or recommendations to those who wanted to take action to become an entrepreneur. Tyler's advice was to start creating small goals in order to reach a big goal. In a sentence, we might say, my sister asked me for advice because she didn't know what to do. The last word on your vocabulary list is endeavor. endeavor. An endeavor is a serious attempt or effort towards a goal. The word endeavor can be used as a verb, such as, she endeavors to be the most hardworking employee at the office. But many times you'll hear the word endeavor being used as a noun. This is the way Tyler used it in our conversation. In a sentence, we might say, we wish you the best of luck on your next endeavor. Let's practice the last 5 vocabulary words and phrases we've gone over. Thrive, self-employed, startup, advice, and endeavor. I'm going to read 5 sentences. Each sentence has a missing word or phrase. Fill in the blank with the correct word using vocabulary words numbers 6 through 10. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper, or a device. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Number 6. The plant will in sunlight. Number 7. She loved being because she didn't have to listen to a boss. Number 8. She didn't listen to her mom's and bought a dog anyway. Number 9. If you accept the job, we will to help you in any way we can. Number 10. The was positive it would find success within the year. In English, many verbs are regular verbs, meaning they follow a specific pattern. All regular verbs end in ed. For example, let's look at the verb cook. The past tense of cook would be cooked. We simply added an ed. Let's look at the verb love. Since love already has an e at the end, all we're going to do is add a d. Loved. How about the verb wash? The past tense of wash would be washed. The past tense of jump would be jumped. Hope. Hoped. Do you see the pattern? Regular verbs always end in ed. What about the word hurry? Since hurry ends in a y, in English what we do is we change that y to an I and then add ed. Hurried. Now let's practice what you've learned about regular verbs in the past tense. I'm going to present you with some regular verbs. Change each regular verb to the past tense. Here's an example for you. Cook. To change cook to the past tense, all I need to do is add an ed. The answer is cooked. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper, or a device. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Do not look at the answers until you've completed the activity. Number 1, talk. Number 2, apply. Number 3, dance. Number 4, like. Number 5, try. Number 6, open. Number 7, watch. Number 8, cry. Number 9, play. Number 10, fix. So now that you know the rule for regular verbs in the past tense, I want to talk about irregular verbs in the past tense. In English, there are many verbs that are irregular, meaning they don't follow the pattern or rule. First, we're going to go over a list of words that Tyler and I used in our conversation about becoming an entrepreneur. You'll notice that all of the verbs on this list are irregular, meaning they don't end in that ed pattern. Please repeat the verb and the verb in the past tense after me. The first irregular verb is used a ton in the English language, and that verb is be. The past tense of be is was, which is used for I, he, she, and it, and were, which is used for you, we, and they. For example, in a sentence we could say, I was late, or you were happy. The next irregular verb on our list is sell. Now, if sell were a regular verb, the past tense would be selled. That is incorrect. The past tense of sell is sold. For example, she sold her couch for $50. The next irregular verb on our list is have. The past tense of have is had. Had. Next, we have do. The past tense of do is did. He did his homework. Meet. The past tense of meet is met. Find. The past tense of find is found. The dog found his bone under the sofa. Keep. The past tense of keep is kept. Make. The past tense of make is made. She made a card for her mother. Know. The past tense of know is knew. Build. The past tense of build is built. The men built the house in 6 months. Let. The past tense of let is actually the same thing. Let. She let the dog out this morning. Give. The past tense of give is gave. Lead. The past tense of lead is led. He led his girlfriend to the dance floor. Think. The past tense of think is thought. To recap, there are many regular verbs in the English language, and those verbs always end in ed. However, there are also many irregular verbs in the English language that do not follow this rule. In the next part of this grammar lesson, we'll go over even more irregular verbs for you to practice and memorize. Now let's practice what you've learned about irregular verbs in the past tense. I'm going to read some sentences. Each sentence contains past tense verbs that are incorrect. I've underlined them for you. What you need to do is write the correct version of the verb. Here's an example for you. She meted him for their date at 7 o'clock. Since meet is not a regular verb, it won't end in ed. The correct answer is met. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper or device so you can check your answers later. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Do not look at the answers until you've completed the activity. Number 1. He thinked he lost his watch, but he finded it in the car. Number 2. The woman builded a bench for the backyard. Number 3. The father gived his truck to his daughter for her 16th birthday. Number 4. We haved a van before we owned this car. Number 5. She knowed the answer to the teacher's question, so she raised her hand. Tyler and I used several irregular verbs in our conversation. However, there are so many more irregular verbs that you need to know. For the second part of this grammar lesson, we're going to go over more common irregular verbs. If you can't remember whether a verb is regular or not, refer to this list. You can also memorize these verbs by making flashcards. Get a small piece of paper or a note card and write the verb on one side and write the past tense of that verb on the other side, and continue to review these until you have them memorized. As I go over each of these irregular verbs, repeat the verb and its form in the past tense. Begin. Began. Bite. Bit. Break. Broke. Bring. Brought. Buy. Bought. Catch. Caught. Choose. Chose. Come. Came. Drink. Drank. Drive. Drove. Eat. Ate. Fall. Fell. Feel. Felt. Fight. Fought. Fly. Flew. Forget. Forgot. Forgive. Forgave. Freeze. Froze. Grow. Grew. Hide. Hid. Leave. Left. Lose. Lost. Mean. Meant. Pay. Paid. read, read, ring, rang, run, ran, see, saw, send, sent, sing, sang, speak, spoke, spend, spent, steal, stole, take, took, tell, told, throw, threw, wear, wore, write, wrote. Now let's practice what you've learned about irregular verbs in the past tense. I'm going to read some sentences. Change the irregular verb in parentheses to the past tense. Here's an example for you. Becky, her lip. The answer is bit. The past tense of the irregular verb bite is bit. Feel free to look back at your list of irregular verbs if you need to. Write your answers on the worksheets provided, a piece of paper or a device, so you can check your answers later. Please pause the video to give yourself enough time to answer. Do not look at the answers until you've completed the activity. Number 1. The whale jumping in the ocean. Number 2. She, with her mom on the phone for an hour last night. 3. The landlord, him a letter asking for the rent. Number 4. My father, us that he would be home at 5 o'clock. Number 5. My roommate, the flu last week. Number 6. He, that idea from me. Number 7. Hundreds of dollars on food this month. Number 8. The celebrity, her most expensive jewelry to the party. Number 9. You, to call your grandmother back. Number 10. We, for 10 straight hours. Number 11. The 2 boys, all the appetizers. Number 12. The team, the game by 12 points. Number 13. 10 miles yesterday. Number 14. Since you, lunch last week, I'll buy it this week. Number 15. He, the party early because he was. Now let's practice your writing. Write the answer to these questions in English. Be as detailed as you can. You may use the transcript and any other resource to help you write your responses. If possible, discuss these questions with a friend in English. Number 1. What was your first job? How old were you? Did you like it? Why or why not? Number 2. What is your job now? Do you like it? Why or why not? Number 3. If you were an entrepreneur, what kind of company would you build? In your opinion, what are some advantages and disadvantages of being an entrepreneur? Congratulations on completing all 5 sections of A Guide to Learning English as a Foreign Language. You've gained vital listening and comprehension skills, learned new vocabulary and grammar, and completed a variety of activities to improve your reading, writing, speaking, and listening abilities. You've even mastered informal and slang phrases that will be invaluable when talking with native speakers. Feel free to return to this course and take it again in the future as a review. You'll find the more you take this course, the easier the conversations will be to understand and the easier the activities will be to complete. Remember, if you have any questions or need any assistance, I'm here to help you. Please be on the lookout for new content I will add in the future, as well as new courses.